Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I'm going to first call the Nantucket Regional Transit Authority meeting to order before we go into the select board agenda at 5:30. And we will proceed with the agenda as written and go to approval of the minutes of November 19th. Any changes or comments?
I don't have any. I move approval.
Second.
So this evening, it doesn't appear that we have either of our other board members online. So we won't need to do roll call unless Malcolm comes on, and then we will do roll call. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously 3-0. And any public comments for items otherwise not on the agenda for tonight for NRTA business? We will have public comment under select board as well. Oh. Okay. Seeing none, I will turn it over to the administrator's report.
Good evening, Gary Roberts, Administrator, NRTA. Just going to start up real quickly with the administrative report. As you're aware, NRTA had issued an RFP for management services to run the buses. If anyone's not aware, NRTA contracts out to a private contractor to run the vehicles and employ all the employees. They do so under the direction of NRTA policies. As is common with all RTAs in the state, there are times when the contracts expire and they get put out, a request for proposals for services get issued, and we start the process of reviewing the proposals that come in. NRTA did issue the RFP. We had 3 companies that did respond. I had a evaluation staff that did evaluate the proposals that were submitted. We had a member from Nantucket Planning and Economic Development, one of my staff, and a former administrator for over 40 years of the RTAs to review these. They did their reviews of the proposals. Then they scored the proposals. The scoring was based on different weights for each one, was qualifications, compatibility of the firm's management philosophy and NRTA's objectives, technical qualifications, their management fee, financial integrity of the company, and DBA goal setting was another lower on the weighted scale. After they scored the proposals that came in, they did interviews with each one of the proposers with a set of questions and any other questions that may have come up. They met from that point and reviewed everything that they've come up with. They had their scoring sheets, and then they scored who they chose. Ultimately, it comes down to the administrator that determines at the end of it on which company they're going to go with. I agreed with their selection of Keolis North America to award to them their proposal. We are in the process now of negotiating and finalizing the contract as we speak now to have this done, to take over operations on March 1st. And if you have any questions on that.
Okay. No questions.
Okay, so we'll move on to the, this is a housekeeping item. Is the approval of the updated Title VI program. Periodically, your Title VI program has to be updated and the board does need to approve the Title VI. It's basically how they would file a claim of discrimination. It's based on population in the area, the numbers, it's a lot of technical things that are in there. It's something that we've had Title VI in place. It was time for the update to be done. So I just presented the update to be done. If any of the numbers have changed, I just asked for approval of that, and I would need a signature on that as well.
Okay. Did the board have any questions?
Just to be clear, this is describes our demographics, and then and should a rider or someone participating in the system feel discriminated against in any way, this would be sort of the basis upon which such a concern would be evaluated.
And yeah, it gives them, it directs them on how a complaint would be made, the steps that are done between my office and through the state that they, and it's the whole process on how it does. But it is generally the demographics that determines everything, and then how the process works to make a complaint if you feel like that you need to make a complaint
Okay,
on it.
thank you.
Tom?
Gary, did you write this document?
The
The Title VI plan?
we work with we got direction, a lot of help from the NPDC to get a lot of the numbers. But yes.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm comfortable with it. I move that we accept it.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously, 3-0. If you have the document, I can sign it or I
Yep.
can sign it later.
Okay. And the final item that I have is just basically you're aware of the industry road contractor lots. We've started the process of a grant application. We're well into that, getting ready for submittal. In things that we've been asked by MassDOT to get is any letters of support we have obtained from our legislators, and I just came in front of the board. There's an attached document as a letter of support. If the board supports the application for this grant funding, that would fund the design for the new facility.
I move that we issue the letter. We did it in MP and EDC as well last night. So
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously, 3-0.
Thank you. And if there's any other business from anyone.
I don't believe so. Is there a motion to adjourn that NRTA meeting?
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously, 3-0.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Next up, we will open the select board meeting for February 18th at 5:37. We will accept the agenda as written and move to announcements, which I'll turn over to the town manager.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. As the board knows, we've been announcing this about once a month or so. We have launched a community claims fund. It was launched on Monday, January 26th to accept claims in response to the Vineyard Wind turbine blade failure in 2024. There's a dedicated website with information and instructions on filing a claim. And all of that can be found on the select board's meeting agenda and online. The town is developing a branding and visual style guide to create a consistent look for town communications. We've issued a survey and we're hoping that people will complete it. It closes on February 28th. There is no select board meeting next Wednesday, February 22nd. Next board meeting will be Wednesday, March 4th.
Okay. Are there any opening select board announcements or comments? Brooke?
Actually, I'll do it under committee reports.
Okay, I was just going to mention that we received a message from Tara Riley, the town biologist, that the commercial scalloping limit was increased to 7, which was something we had given her the authority to do if it made sense. So just figured we'd announce that. Update on public comments or questions from prior select board meetings. I have one from the 12th, from Campbell Sutton. Campbell inquired about the status of the master plan update. The town's response: the master plan update is an initiative led by the planning board with assistance from the Planning and Land Use Services Department and consultants Barrett Planning Group. The consultants were recently on the island for several days to conduct a series of workshops with town staff, including department heads and support personnel. The next step is to review a summary of those findings and incorporate the feedback into the draft vision statement. This review is anticipated to take place at the March 9th Planning Board meeting. Following that discussion, more information will be shared with the public. To sign up for engagement opportunities, visit www.nantucket-ma.gov/masterplan. So hopefully that's helpful. Next up, we have public comment for items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion this evening. And I do have to limit the comments to 3 minutes. And I just want to note that Malcolm McNabb is now online, so we will be taking all votes by roll call.
Good evening, Campbell Sutton. This is for public comment. I had a couple of questions. Hopefully I get through them. In the end of January, Herschel, I'm going to get that, Allerhand had written a letter to the INM, which I found sort of interesting, but I was wondering whether town council or you guys could comment on whether the section that says, I believe that the STR article adopted by special town meeting does not grant permission for the practice of investors purchasing homes in residential areas for STR income. The findings state that the purpose of the article is to restore the historic land use practice of islanders and seasonal residents renting their private dwellings to vacationer. It's clear that private dwellings means owner occupied. I didn't want to get into that part, but I was just wondering whether the purpose of the short-term article and this interpretation would work together. So I can give that in. The other piece I had was in going over the warrant last night, there was a question that came up because I had no idea about this, that the Conservation Commission actually has oversight over some of the town properties, and this is for 35 Grove Lane. So I was just wondering what other properties the Conservation Commission might oversee and what the goal of that is. I understand the goal of the article, but I had no idea about that piece of information. The other thing I wanted to say just quickly, because I didn't hear about it till this afternoon, about the demolition on Smith's Point. And I think it's evident that we don't have penalties that are strong enough to dissuade anyone from pretty much anything, unless you're at my financial level, and then, well, you step into line. But it seems to me we need to be having some very significant, now I'm talking $100,000 fines, as well as any permit that has been approved or could be approved should be rescinded, and there should be a freeze on that lot for 5 years where nothing can be done. Whether it's you've taken down somebody's trees or you've taken down a historic structure, there's protocols to follow, and we need to get people following them. So that's my last comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I'd like to speak tonight about the upcoming annual town meeting and the decision to have the start time at 4:30 p.m. Many community members like myself work until 5 p.m. Because of these changes, we'll be arriving late. I would like to understand why 4:30 was chosen, as this is earlier start time, makes it difficult for most residents trying to attend. Town meeting is one of the most important civic engagements in our community. When the meetings begin, many residents will be able to arrive if the time kind of risks and limits the participation of some. Whether intentional or not, it creates the appearance that access to voting and discussion is being restricted for those that have to work. My concern is that starting at 4:30, they go through the whole process of starting the meeting. There's technical amendments on the floor. We're also calling and passing over articles. And some of those things are important to everybody in the community that attend. And I'm afraid that it's going to leave them out from being able to get there in time to call an article. And with the Island Home coming up as article number 11, we're going to get to that one pretty quick. And it is possible that that could be starting before 5 p.m. when most of us would like to be there in order to comment. Depending on how quickly things roll, I just hope that you guys could reconsider and push back to 5 p.m. Because I think you're going to cut a lot of the community out, and a lot of your dedicated people work till 5 p.m. I greatly appreciate your time. It's a great civic experience for everybody. And I think that by doing a 4:30 start time, you're really cutting into the amount of people that can get there and possibly make a quorum. Thank you.
I'll be right back to you, Lucy. We have Raphael Richter online.
Before I pull him in, I just want to apologize for accidentally kicking him out.
Raphael,
Oh,
we've
hi, can you
already
hear me?
gone through NRTA, but we want to apologize. You got bumped out because we were afraid you were a Zoom bomber.
Oh, well, I assure you I'm not a Zoom bomber, and
And
I'd
I
still like to
appreciate
just
that.
give
I
my
looked
public
up
comment
that
if you
you
would
had
prefer,
emailed
please
me.
do.
But go ahead.
So no problem. I'm sorry, I can't I can't turn on my video just because I had to join from a different machine due to the being kicked out. So just apologies for that. My name is Raphael Richter. I'm the owner of Valley Transportation Services of Mass, commonly known as VTS around the island. We're the current operator of the transit management services for Nantucket. I personally live and grew up on Cape Cod. VTS has been providing management services for over 30 years on Nantucket under local ownership throughout. Our ownership and leadership teams live and work in the communities we serve and remain constantly accountable in ways which can never be replicated or truly prioritized by a global corporation operating contracts vastly larger and more significant to that firm's bottom line than the NRTA. VTS exists for a single purpose without any other distractions: to serve and operate the NRTA wave system safely, reliably, and with integrity. VTS has maintained a full staff at all times of year with a happy, devoted, and reliable workforce. The evidence of this is in our distinction as the only RTA out of 15 statewide that has to date been able to operate with a satisfied non-union workforce. Before you tonight was a critical presentation of the approval for a contract of management services of the system. And you've been told that Keolis is taking over the contract. They're best known in Massachusetts for managing the MBTA commuter rail system, and I provided a number of links documenting the poor performance with that contract, including recently in a critical expansion. If they can't perform satisfactorily for MBTA, how can they be expected to care about or manage such a smaller contract with the conviction it deserves? You will be told that you must approve or endorse the contract tonight, as there is less than 2 weeks till the current contract expires. However, the short clock is the result of NRTA's poor timing and poor procurement planning, and you should insist on taking more time to read all of the proposals submitted in full and make sure you don't endorse a huge change that will have lasting negative impacts on the critical transportation infrastructure of Nantucket once the NRTA is beholden to this new multinational. Already, we understand systems that we as a local company were obliged to use to ensure NRTA had complete control of the system will not be required of Keolis. In my observation, procurement has not been a strong suit for the NRT administration when considering the implications of important acquisitions. A simple example is the rollout of the electric vehicles for the WAVE system. Well, a properly planned program would steward public funds wisely. NRTA administration procured electric vehicles with what has appeared to be little or no plan for how to successfully charge them. The solution, the NRTA spent even more money purchasing a massive propane fire generator that runs 2 times a day, every day, to charge the electric buses, thereby negating and making worse the emissions of these clean vehicles for nearly 2 years now. The lack of attention to detail in that procurement with much lower stakes should set off alarm bells. What does the NRTA advisory board want for its system? One, run locally where control and performance are measured and managed locally, or to become a rounding error for a multinational with far more important priorities over the next few years, such as not losing the MBTA commuter rail contract. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Lucy?
Hi, I'm Lucy Haher. And first of all, I want to say thank you very much for having this public open session for the public. I think it's wonderful. So I have a question on the warrant as well, because we were at Tuesdays with Campbell last night. And my article question I have on is Article 78, Town Council Form of Government. And it just seems like it lacks a lot of detail because it's only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5 lines long. And I'm wondering, my first question is, I'm wondering how are people going to learn more about this, because this is a small article with a big decision. And number 2 is that I'm wondering if the select board are going to recommend a take no action on this article, given the lack of information. And also kind of like keeping in mind that this, as a sense of the question meeting last year at the town meeting, the ballot was about, turned down. So that's my question. I've got 2 minutes left. Do you want to joke?
We'll get back to you on those. Yeah.
I was glad to see that Lucy has a paper warrant in her hand, and I wanted to let people know that if anybody needs a printed copy of the warrant, they are available at the Enquirer and Mirror for free. So if anybody needs one, you can go there.
Thank you, Erica. Okay, seeing no other public comments this evening, we have no new business. We will move on to approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Are there any changes, questions, motions?
Move approval of all 4.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, we will take this by roll call. Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 4-0. Items 1 through 4. Then we will move on to Citizen Departmental Committee requests and reports. We have the Capital Programs Committee review of FY 2027 Capital Program Committee report, and Jill Veith is the chair, who is at the mic.
Hi, everyone. I had something prepared to read, but I'm happy if you just want to go to questions too, because I know you've probably read the report, if that makes it quicker. I know you've got a long night ahead of you too. So if you want to do that, that's fine.
I feel comfortable having read the report, actually.
Yeah,
Though
there's
that-
nothing I'm saying that's not in that report.
And I just want to say, I really appreciate the work that goes into the Capital Program Committee and the depth and detail in the report. And I think it's really great. And I encourage the community to read it.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you, because I've been on Capcom and I know how much work it is.
Yeah, I have to say this year, what was kind of fun for me was I really drilled down into the F-150 truck versus the 250 versus the 350. And I got really consumed by it. And I thought, gosh, what is happening to me? So I think we really enjoy the details is really what struck me this year.
Yeah, Jill and Howard, who's also Howard Metz is also here, vice chair of the Capcom. What I appreciate is that a lot of these projects, right, they have gone through other boards and been talked about, and you have to go back to meetings and talk to some of us and find out more information. And so it's not just looking at a sheet of paper in a vacuum, right? There's a lot of moving parts of this. And I think you guys do a really good job on drilling down to like, what is the wider context in the community on a lot of these things, and how would the affect, and what did the select board say, and what might, in this case, your FinCom members say or think, and if it went to them, et cetera. So I think I really appreciate that.
Thank you. We, the town manager and Brian Turbot, our town CFO, they do a really good job of making sure we have all the right staff. And one great thing about being the Capital Committee, and I say this in case anybody ever wants to apply to be on it, is you get to meet everybody in town administration. Not all the committees have that access, and we really get to, and it makes a huge difference. And this year in particular, I have to say there were some issues. We required a lot of information that sometimes we hadn't before, especially like on coastal resiliency, on some of the housing issues, and those they really provided an incredible level of detail that I think will really serve the committee going forward as a real baseline for here's where we are, here's where we've been, and here's what we're going to do next year. And you can still reflect on all the work that they showed us this year And I'm really excited about that. So any future committee members would have access to that information.
Yep, I've been the select board representative, and it's a really good, interactive, thorough process. I mean, the only things that I would note is that there's two very large projects that we're putting forward for borrowing that Capcom did not recommend. And I think that it does come down to the economics of them.
It does.
Um,
And I also on that, I did a little analysis compared to last year. And it's interesting because from a percentage basis, the breakdown between general fund and enterprise funds actually the same. And we changed our ranking systems this year too, as Don knows fully well. And it still came out the same in terms of what we did, even though we analyzed things individually. On the whole, really the percentages were the same of breakdown between those. It's really the debt exclusions that changed the number. 2 years ago, I think we had 115 million that we looked at, and last year was 250, and this year was 260. But really the numbers on the general fund were kind of coming down, and same with the enterprise funds. It's the debt exclusions. And you all know that historically so.
And I just wanted to note that I still stand by my decision and this board's decision to put those forward to town meeting to the voters, because they're a choice about what is important for Nantucket to have, including the island home and the Somerset sewer, and whether we're willing to pay the price that goes along with it in relation to everything else.
Yeah,
Brooke?
another comment is, I mean, I think the fact that we don't all agree always is a sign of good governance, right? We have people looking at these expenditures from different perspectives. And while in some ways it would be easier if we all agreed and we could say to the voters, we all agree. But the bottom line is we have choices to make as a community. And that the fact that we have different groups of people really reviewing all of this, right? We have town administration, we have the select board, we have FinCom, we have Capcom. And so I encourage the voters to look at all the perspectives when they as they come to town meeting and the ballot, and understand the choices that are before them, as Don indicated. So
Yes, I agree. And I think that the report reflected that, of course, that we're super supportive of and want the community to weigh in. I mean, we need them to, and I don't think there's any disagreement with that. I mean, our job really is to look at the money, and so I think that that's what we did. And we saw one of the debt exclusions last year failed, and it came back this year as well. I mean, on the sewer, however, I think that really was just a timing issue because you all were still deliberating. And so we didn't have that sense of urgency when we were really looking at it in December. And then you had your sewer master plan and we'd already finished our rankings. So I think that was more of a timing issue and probably could use some more deliberation, but we didn't have that opportunity given the timeline.
Malcolm, do you have any questions? Oh, you're muted if you're trying to say something.
No, I think you've all said it well. I think actually that's an incredible report. The detail is quite amazing. And I compliment the committee.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the Housing Department request for a supplemental letter of support for the Select Board to the Internal Revenue Service regarding the Nantucket Land Trust's 501c3 tax exempt status.
Madam Chair, I will be recusing on this.
Yep, so it will be the three of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christy Ferrantella, the Municipal Housing Director. The request in front of you tonight is a supplemental select board letter in support of the Nantucket Land Trust application to the IRS to be recognized as an entity exempt from federal income tax. A typical 501c3 statuses under housing are really applying to address low income and affordable housing, whereas something that's unique about the Nantucket Land Trust is that they're applying under the IRS code of lessening the burdens of government. And so the IRS has asked for some follow-up information from their previous application last June 30th. And this letter of support really demonstrates the need of how the Nantucket Land Trust would help our municipal government be able to create municipal housing and support the broader community. So the recommendation would be to approve the letter in the packet and execute it, and we will send this over to the Land Trust to submit.
Okay. Brooke, Malcolm,
I would move approval.
is there a
Second.
second? Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Dunhill, aye. That carries unanimously. And I have the letter here for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have the assessor request to rename Plover Lane off of South Shore Road to Plover Way. Good evening, Rob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rob Rainey, Town's Assessor. Under the Town Code, Chapter 126-2, the assessor has the responsibility to number properties on streets, but not to name streets. So there's a distinction there. The assessor works closely with public safety to make sure that numbering is consistent across all streets on the island. There are obviously many exceptions due to the age of the history of the island. Yeah, Eric, if you could put the GIS would probably be better. Sorry about that. In December of 2024, Public Safety and I consulted over Plover Lane, which appeared as an unnamed way from South Shore Road. You can just see it sort of in the middle there. Right, if you're going down South Shore towards the sewer plant, Plover Way or Plover Lane is right before Augie's property. And it would technically serve a handful of properties on there. However, no properties along there have Plover Lane addresses. When I consulted with public safety, the concern was that there already is a Plover Lane out in Walwinet, and keeping Plover Lane here would cause too much confusion. So as a temporary solution, we named this one on the GIS map as Plover Way. But recognizing that that was not official and that there were no properties along there, so it really didn't matter. It was just an identifier on the map. Fast forward to today, and the taxpayer at 8R Blueberry Lane, which is right there, has requested a street number on what is officially Plover Lane, but temporarily Plover Way, to access his property. Therefore, so I'm not sure how I got roped into this, but I am requesting you all to either keep it's up to you to, as far as naming goes, but to keep Plover Lane, which I would not like because it's too confusing because there's already one in Walwinet, or to change this to Plover Way, which is slightly less confusing, or perhaps pick a new name altogether that doesn't sound like either one of those. So that is why I'm here.
Should we take suggestions from the audience? Has public safety weighed in on whether it's Plover Way is okay with them?
They said, yes, it's okay.
Okay, then that's the direction I think we should go, in my opinion.
Yeah, and can I just add, usually the process sometimes comes through town administration, and the two people that I always check with is public safety about the E911 and the assessor. So, and I double checked after Rob put this forward.
Okay, is there a motion?
So I would make a motion to change Plover Lane off of South Shore Road to Plover Way.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 4-0.
Thank you.
Plover Way. Next up, we have the Natural Resources Department request to schedule a public hearing to consider removing the existing time of year restrictions, November 1st to May 1st, for the head of the harbor Cascada to allow for year-round utilization. Good evening, Jeff.
Hello, everybody. We're just here tonight. We have a section of 6 2-acre leases in the head of the harbor. And in working with the growers last year and this year, they all requested unanimously to be able to use that area year round. There's currently a restriction kind of from spring to fall where they're not able to use that area. It does still count against the maximum 10 acres that they have, but I think as they've had some success in the head of the harbor and the main leases, it gives them a good spot and some shallower water to keep gear and work on gear. And it's one of the few times they've all agreed on something. So we're looking forward to hopefully having the public hearing to be able to use that property year round.
I would move that we should schedule a public hearing.
Yes, sorry. And
Second.
also, if possible, we're requesting for March the 11th, if you guys need to do date certain.
Okay. I move that we schedule a public hearing on March 11th.
Is there a
Second.
second? Oh, Malcolm seconded. All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you,
4-0.
guys.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have real estate matters. Request for approval and execution of a purchase and sale agreement, a quitclaim deed and settlement statement of town-owned yard sale parcel known as Parcel B, Nobodere Avenue, as shown on plan of land entitled Plan to Acquire Land for General Municipal Purposes, Nobodere Avenue in Nantucket, Mass, dated January 30th, 2017. Tracy?
That pretty much sums it up. Thank you. Tracy McDonald, Real Estate Manager. As you stated, I'm here to request the conveyance of Parcel B on Plan 2017-12. The parcel abuts 25 Nobodere Avenue, which has recently been subdivided into lots 1 and 2. And the bottom half is now the abutting parcel to Parcel B. The authorization for this conveyance was Article 77 at the 2010 town meeting. So this has been in the yard sale pipeline for quite a long time. The lot is a 2,000 square foot lot. And the price factor was set at $2.70 a square foot. And that was recommended by the Real Estate Assessment Committee on last Friday. And that brings the total purchase price to $5,400. We also had a coastal resilience risk assessment prepared by Natural Resources, which revealed no immediate erosion risks. So I'm formally requesting approval and execution of a deed and settlement documents in the form prepared by Town Council for conveyance of Parcel B to 7 Dials Nantucket LLC for the purchase price of $5,400 with customary terms and restrictions set forth in the deed.
I'm going to channel Matt here since he's not here tonight. Just confirming this doesn't change any ground cover or the things that we've set as policy, right?
Yeah, it's actually probably more favorable, Brooke, because they've subdivided. Originally, the full lot was a much larger parcel.
Okay. All right, great. I'd move approval.
So they probably would obtain a little bit of additional.
They
ground
get there.
cover.
It's 2,000 square feet. They have their frontage on Miles Standish, which and that's not changing in this scenario. So they might be able to build something a little bit bigger, but it won't substantially change anything else.
Right.
Yeah, and it's already subdivided. It's the subdivision piece that Matt always
Correct.
talked about, not the ground
Yes,
cover.
it's
My
the,
mistake.
it's the subdivision. That's what, Matt did express a little bit of a worry about access in the future with erosion and so forth, but it sounds like you had Natural Resources review that.
We did. I mean, there is some it did show like in 2017 70, it migrates up into that area. So it wasn't no risk whatsoever, but there is, risk, but it's not till like 2070.
And there's other ways to access all of these properties because there's a
Right.
paper road behind that we haven't extinguished.
Correct. And I actually did ask how far Wee Weeder is open. I mean, you could get down there. It's not ideal, but they are traveling up Miles Standish and accessing that way.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there a motion?
A motion to approve and execute the deed and settlement documents.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. There's no town manager's report, select board reports and comments. We have a select board strategic plan update.
Thank you. Quick intro on this. As the board will recall, we had your annual strategic plan retreat in October. Since then, a report on the retreat was provided to you, and we've been working on updating the plan in accordance with the retreat agreements and discussions. We have a preliminary implementation meeting scheduled with staff in early March. And I'm going to turn this over to Deputy Town Manager Greg Tivnan and/or Michelle Ferguson, who is our facilitator and consultant from RAF TELUS, who facilitated the retreat and prepared the updated plan. Greg, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Great. Thank you, Libby. Good evening, everyone. Before I hand it over to Michelle Ferguson from RAF TELUS Consulting, just some statistics regarding the strategic plan that the board and the town has been working very diligently on for the past 8 years. It is an 8-year-old plan, so that's excellent. It's becoming mature. We've already committed to about $94 million into the plan since 2018. Since 2018, there have been 11 agenda-specific items on the select board to address the strategic plan, but there's also been 20, this is our 24th public meeting regarding the strategic plan, so we're trying to get it out there in the public as much as possible. And over the past 8 years, we have operationalized 17 initiatives, basically priorities set by the board to be looked at each focus area that have now just become day-to-day operations. So that's a pretty remarkable achievement for all the staff who've been working really hard on this. And with that, I am going to kick it over to Michelle.
Thanks, Greg, and good evening. You summarized it so well, and I think the underlying message there, what I think is one of the most important messages, is that the strategic plan matters. To have that much clarity and alignment and results is really a testament to the select board, who has diligently annually reviewed this, and then certainly, as Greg said, to the town staff who work really, really hard to implement the policy direction that the strategic plan lays out that's approved by the select board. As Greg mentioned, we met back in October, and as I said too, the select board has had a tradition of reviewing appropriately the strategic plan every year. And one of the important conversations each year is to talk about how conditions have changed on the island and the needs of the community have evolved and changed. And so the plan evolves and changes to address those situations. And I think, again, the remarkable alignment is a testament to the diligence of reviewing the plan each year, updating it, celebrating successes as things have been accomplished, but then also adding additional initiatives, which is certainly what the board did this year. And when you all had the opportunity to review the plan and reflect on how the conditions have changed. So the strategic plan that you have before you reflects some modifications, but the bones still remain intact and really are the fabric of the organization as well as the community too. So happy to answer any questions and look forward to working with staff on implementation or continued implementation of the strategic plan.
Anybody?
I'll just say it's an extremely thoughtful and helpful process for me now in my 4th year on the board, that it ties to the work of boards that preceded me and sets the stage for the boards that will follow, those of us who are serving now. And just to have that dialogue on an annual basis and really think hard about where we want to go. We're facing a lot of challenges, a lot of financial needs. And, our job is strategic, and, we do the mundane, but the strategic is also an important part. And the partnership between the select board and town administration on the execution of the priorities has been amazing since I've joined the board. So I'm really appreciative that the board that started this, Don, you were there, did so and has created this guiding process to keep the threads through, regardless of how the makeup of the board changes over time.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I completely agree with all that. I think our strategic planning meeting every fall is very useful for us. It's usually 5 hours, and we get to talk about an awful lot of subjects. And this year, one thing that was very evident was things that are like in the capital report, which is as Libby calls them, the collision projects, which is a lot of different capital items coming at once in a short period of time over 2, 3, 5, 10-year period. And how the board and the town are going to prioritize that and what the public's needs are and wants and desires and things such as that. So, and I also think that it's a really good guiding document for us to keep track of how our performances from these. And in the focus area performance summary, you can see some of the goals completed, and seeing that 54% of the housing, 54.5% of the housing initiatives are completed is like astounding, because the need is so great, and there's just so many challenges in that world and in many other areas. But I think that we work really well with town admin on this, and to come up with the goals and try and implement them and then revisit them every year. And thank you to Michelle and Julia formerly and Raf Tallis for working on that with us.
Malcolm, do you have any comments?
No, I think you've said it all.
Okay. Oh,
Hi,
Campbell, go
Campbell.
ahead.
I just have a quick question about whether we can ask a question.
Yes,
Can we ask a
you may
question?
ask a question.
Okay. So I was just wondering, in the introduction that Greg gave, he mentioned $94 million. And of course, I'm like, for what? So I'm just sort of wondering, has this whole strategic plan cost $94 million? Or are there goals and things like that fall under that umbrella? If you could just explain that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Greg, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, Madam Chair, no problem. Yes, that's exactly right. There are, in fact, this last exercise in October, the select board whittled down their goals in the 4 focus areas from 23 to 18, and whittled down the amount of individual specific projects or initiatives, as we call them, from 64 to 33, to be much more streamlined and in line with what the board is really trying to achieve. So since 2018, they actually don't have the data of how many goals and initiatives there were, but with them come a lot of projects, and with those projects comes a price tag. So the $94 million represents everything from money that has been put aside for housing initiatives, or even hiring new staff, such as the hiring of a project manager, or the hiring of the environmental contaminant administrator in public health, as well as other actions like that. So it's not the cost of the project, it's the cost of implementing the entire strategic plan. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. And I mean, just to wrap that all up, I think every process has been really valuable that we've gone through as a board, as different boards throughout since 2018. And this one the board was very engaged in the streamlining process of really being realistic and talking through with town administration about implementation and removing goals and projects that weren't making sense, and really focusing all of our resources on the things that are attainable, we can accomplish, and really make the differences that we collectively see as the highest community needs that fall within government purview. And we do revisit this every year. We will have a change in the board this year. So not only will we be doing our strategic planning retreat, but we'll also be having a governance meeting probably in June to onboard a new board member and refresh everybody else. So I see someone else at the mic, Val
I just have a
Oliver.
question, Val Oliver. Does the strategic plan include the dump? That seems like a really big thing for us to accomplish. And I
So-
say that as someone who had their trash picked up and all the recycling went in with the trash.
Okay, there's a couple questions there.
No, I know.
So solid waste has been on the strategic plan, and the most critical part of that was executing the new management agreement, and so that was a huge part of the strategic plan that is now done. I mean, obviously managing the landfill and the recycling center and all of that is part of town operations. But the strategic plan really had getting to that transition as a huge goal, which has been accomplished. So while imperfect, our management of trash will always be imperfect.
I know.
We've come a long way, and in terms of how we collect and sort trash, the change in the operating agreement gives us a lot more freedom to amend waste streams, collection, et cetera. But it's, there's haulers involved. It's, a lot of complicated stuff. Interestingly, and just to your point, for those of us who take our trash to ourselves, compliance with sorting is like 95%.
I know, yeah.
Trash that's picked up by haulers, much lower compliance in our sorting. It's a goal, hard to achieve.
Okay.
So, but
just thought
good
I'd
question.
throw it in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Anyone else have anything? Okay. Next up, Malcolm, do you have anything for the update on the investigation of the African Meeting House vandalism?
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to adopt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 4-0.
Thank you.
Malcolm, did you have an update for us this evening?
I would say based on the last document request, the investigator is digging pretty deeply.
Okay, thank you. Any committee reports?
Yes, NPNEDC met last night. We had over 3-hour meeting. The bulk of it was spent on working through the differences between the two NPNEDC enabling legislation articles. We did a lot of compromising, both parties, but ultimately the petitioners under Article 75 were not ready to or unable to accept sort of the final version. And so we're waiting to hear from them, and hopefully we'll end up with a recommendation to FinCom for a single motion and warrant article.
Madam Chair, just two quick things for Board of Health. One is that the proposed septic regulations that we have changes that we have an open public hearing on will not be closed at our regular meeting tomorrow. They will be held over. But for those maybe just coming to it now, definitely take a look at those. I know we're trying to dial in some possible amendments with housing that we sent a letter to, et cetera. And then my other one was, I think there will likely be a special meeting that is trying to be scheduled to talk about turf, artificial turf, and that whole discussion, probably March 2nd, if it can be scheduled. So stay tuned for anybody interested in that.
Affordable Housing Trust approved funding for a new rental preservation program. We have been hearing from the community a lot that there's folks out there who are renting affordably to year-rounders and have been for years. And there's sort of been a request. We created Lease to Locals, which was intended to convert underutilized or summer only utilized rentals into year-round rentals. And that's been a really successful program. And so this rental preservation program is designed to support financially existing year-round long-term leases. And so we've adopted program guidelines, we approve funding, and there is a procurement out for an administrator for the program. So that'll be rolling out soon.
Great. I do have 2 meetings tomorrow. One is for the Island Home to sort of sort out how the subcommittee is going to address all of the questions at town meeting this year. And also Cannabis Advisory, we're going to start to get at some of the changing landscape with social consumption. So stay tuned. Last on our agenda, we have 2 public hearings for HDC appeals this evening. The first public hearing is to consider an appeal of Schwartz Family Properties Trust, Gerald Schwartz and Heather Reisman of the Historic District Commission approval of certificate appropriateness number HDC 2025-08-13048 with conditions to install fencing, gates, and cattle grates at 11, 13, 17, and 21 Nonantum Avenue. Map 87, parcels 110, 139, 58, and 156. I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm just going to note a few things as we go into the process on these. I would like to we have a lot of information in the record that we've already had a chance to review. So I would appreciate it if people don't repeat information that we already have, but please stick to the main points that are within our purview to consider. We cannot substitute our opinion on HDC business. We can make a decision on whether the HDC has been arbitrary or capricious, or whether there was a flaw in their process, such as like the agenda wasn't properly noticed, something along those lines. So, if we could try and keep opening statements under 5 minutes, hitting those main points, and then as the board deliberates, we won't close the public hearing right away. We can come back with questions and if we need any follow-up information. So opening the public hearing, I will move to the appellant to state his or her case.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Kurt Fortin. Good evening, members of the select board. My name is Kurt Fortin. I'm the estate manager for Gerald Schwartz and Heather Reisman. And I am here on their behalf alongside counsel Ryan Douglas. I would like to briefly explain how we arrived here today. When the homeowners purchased these lots approximately 18 years ago, they worked closely with architects, designers, and towns to create a property that met Nantucket standards. At that time, the town required significant perimeter plantings to ensure that the property was screened from public views. The homeowners not only complied, they exceeded those requirements. I personally managed the installment of the landscape over a 2.5-year period. From the beginning, the goal was mutual: protect the character of the property and prevent visibility from the public way. Over the last 18 years, the deer population has caused significant and ongoing damage. We have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars replanting, installing plant-specific fencing, applying deer deterrents, and consulting with contractors. The problem has only intensified. Plant, plant species that were once considered deer resistant are no longer safe. The perimeter planting required by the town were continuously being destroyed. As we searched for long-term solutions, we looked around the island and saw deer fencing, cattle grates in many locations. We began by using small plant-specific fencing, but the approach proved temporary and wasteful. We then considered a full perimeter fence. Because of the nature of this property, with contractors, service providers, deliveries, gates are slow, prone to failure, and disruptive for a property with constant traffic. A cattle grate is a durable, low-maintenance solution that eliminates both mechanical failure and human error. We researched their design and effectiveness carefully. Before proceeding, I personally went to the town building and asked, who do I speak to with about installing a fence and cattle grates? I was directed to Paul Murphy. I explained our plans in full. I was told no permits were required. I specifically asked whether there was anyone else I need to speak to, and I was told no. The homeowners have never undertaken work without seeking proper guidance. We relied on what we were told and on what we observed throughout the island. After installation was completed, we received a violation letter from the HDC. We responded immediately. We contacted the HDC, gathered all the required material, and filed the appropriate application. We attempted to work cooperatively throughout the process. At no point was there any intention to avoid review, ignore regulations, or act improperly. Our intent was to protect the landscape that the town originally required us to install and do so with a way that was functional and visually integrated. During the HDC hearing, it was acknowledged that portions of the fence are not visible from the public way. That demonstrates that screening can be achieved without a rigid setback requirement in every location. Additionally, due to existing driveway configurations, some of which are less than 20 feet from the property line, relocating the fence as directed is not particularly achievable without removing substantial plant material that was originally required by the town. After the HDC decision, we reached out again in good faith. We sent a certified letter and offered to meet on site to walk the property and discuss particular solutions. That request was not accepted. We are here tonight because we believe we acted in good faith, relied on town guidance, and made every effort to integrate these improvements into the landscape responsibly. With that, I'll turn the matter over to Council Ryan Douglas.
And Madam Chair, I will be quick because I am conscious of time, and I do apologize. But if I may, just for
Yes,
the record,
so certainly just try and keep to the main points of the argument.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. So just for the record, my name is Ryan Douglas of Rubin and Rudman, appearing on behalf of the Schwartz Family Properties Trust, the owner of 11 Nantucket Avenue. And I do appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I will make it quick. There are several points I'd like to make, but just in light of time and given the direction from the board, I will refer you to my latest memorandum. I think ultimately the central issue, which is specified in violation number 2, if you look at the violation notice, is the fence. So the notice actually specified that it's portions of the fence along Nantucket Avenue and Woodbine. But if you look at Exhibit A, the violation notice appears to require relocation of substantial portions of the rest of the fence, and in some cases it actually appears like it's around the entire perimeter. So the clarity itself is a little bit troubling.
And I will just make the brief point that deer fencing is widespread across Nantucket and viewable from publicly traveled roads. And if you look at the island map board, and Kurt, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the purple markers you see represent non-HDC approved reviewed deer fences. The red represent non-HDC reviewed cattle grates. The yellow markers represent the ones that have been approved by the HDC. And the scale of the map is the point. There are dozens of installations, I believe 43, and that if the commission's interpretation were applied consistently, there would be a lot of violations. That's not what we're asking tonight. That's not what's happened here. This is just an issue of selective enforcement being arbitrary and capricious. And I don't need to go into this now, but the case law is pretty clear that you can't impose burdens on one property than another, and as to similarly situated property owners, and when they do, it is considered arbitrary and capricious pursuant to the Superior Court. So the fence at 11 Nonantum is not unique here. It's not taller than island norms. It's not more visible than others, and requiring to move the fence 15 or 20 feet back while leaving comparable fencing, most of which never received HGC approval in place across Nantucket, is unequal treatment. So that's really the core. And again, just to hit the last point, just to Kurt's comment, there's the additional layer here, which is that the property was originally approved subject to the screening requirements. So dense vegetative buffering was mandated to protect the historic landscape, and the deer population has made the buffering, again, almost impossible to maintain. And removing or relocating the fence undermines the very screening that the HDC itself required as a condition of the property's development. So we're attempting to comply with that, but it would be inconsistent to require screening and then prohibit the only effective method here that protects that screening. You have the memorandum before you that I submitted with regard to the cattle grading. We believe as a threshold issue that the HDC is an architectural review body, and per Section 9 of the Enabling Act, it does have the authority to regulate exterior architectural features. And yes, Section 2 includes driveways and walks as structures for the purpose of Section 9. But we're talking about a component of that here. And I don't want to get too lost in the weeds with regard to the cattle grading. That's almost a secondary issue. But if you are considering cattle grading as jurisdictional, then you're also considering manhole covers, gravel, some certain types of plantings actually, and that interpretation doesn't have any type of limiting principle. So, Kurt, am I missing anything?
One thing was, he stated 43 properties. That was 43 properties is just cattle grades that were not approved, that I don't know was approved. And then we didn't research every single one, but as you saw in the packet, there's numerous fences that are completely just on property lines. And I personally walked to the entire property, selectively weaving in between the like pruning myself in between, so the outside couldn't see it, the inside couldn't see it, and we're not demolishing all of what the town asked us to do in the first place.
Yeah, and the last point is just, again, we're not asking for for any type of enforcement against these other properties. I want to make that clear. It's not within, I don't even think, your jurisdiction or the HDC's jurisdiction. It's only to highlight that this is happening all around the island. It's common practice, but it is being done on a selective enforcement basis, and that is the problem. So thank you so much for your time this evening, and I'll yield it back over to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll let you know if we have more questions. And then for the HDC.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Stephen Welch. I just want to call this meeting of the HDC, the Nantucket Historic Commission, to order. We have a quorum. So I've done that, and then I'll try and remember to adjourn so that we're not all standing around later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kathy Flynn, Land Use Specialist for the town. So the HTC review process doesn't start and end at new dwellings, additions, garages, or pools. It also includes landscape features like fences, arbors, gates, adding or removing shutters, changing the color of your house, all signs temporary and permanent, and retaining walls under 4 feet. Their purview also extends to landscape features with material changes at grade level, referred to as hardscape, including but not limited to patios, walkways, driveway materials, driveway aprons, and cattle grates. The landscape hardscape features do not require a building permit. They only require HDC approval. Many property owners are not aware of this, and neither are folks in the trades. So that's why you see them everywhere. As you all are aware, the HDC's purview is what's architecturally appropriate and what can be seen from a publicly traveled way. These features are reviewed in the same fashion. Approvals and conditional approvals are often granted and are based widely on what's appropriate, taking into consideration character and setting, and what can be seen from a publicly traveled way. This application was a result of a citizen's complaint. They responded by submitting an application. This property was viewed by the commission in advance of the August 12th meeting. The fencing and cattle grates were considered highly visible. The commission made its conditional approval based on what can be seen from Nonantum and Woodland Street. And then in reference to the other properties, they're really not relevant to this appeal, because if they were, they wouldn't even be considered at the meeting, because the HDC reviews what's in front of them. And of those, I found 11 approvals. They're valid for 3 years. Only one is signed up for an inspection. So I didn't get a chance to look at all of them. And then there's also one still in the review process. So thank you.
Good evening again. So, I'm not really quite sure how to approach this one, but I'm mostly, I wonder if there's questions you have for the HDC. Maybe we pick up there and then I'll work in any comments I have in the interest of time, as opposed to reading my 5-minute prepared quick script.
I kind of had a question about the original approval for the screening to block certain architectural features within the property, and the kind of the background with this possibly disrupting a different approval that was made prior.
Sure. So as the letter indicates, as part of the prior approvals, the owners were required to maintain a heavily landscaped and screened frontage along Nonantum Avenue to protect neighborhood character and preserve the historic streetscape. The rationale with the fencing is that, well, first of all, fencing is a structure. It is part of the HDC's purview. That's simple fact. Excuse me. The claim is that the HCC's conditions for screening contradict the town's prior directives for screening. The conditions for screening are for materials that are constructed of a pattern that is inconsistent with the character and setting of a rural environment. These are the same conditions established under the prior town directives for the structures themselves, given the, I presume, I don't know this particular application, if in 2015 or 2016 I sat on it. But in any event, the purpose of screening then and the purpose of screening now is to preserve the character and setting of the rural environment. And if deer are eating a particular plant material that is taking away the screening, then the onus is upon the property owner as part of the HCC's screened at time of inspection and thereafter to determine what materials or what means and methods are required to prevent deer from eating them. There are a variety of plant materials that deer do not eat. However, we haven't had a very cold winter in a long time. And as you may know, some of you, deer are eating pretty much everything. They're eating bark they don't eat. They're eating kitty litter. They're eating pretty much trash, everything. So there's a bigger problem that's called deer on the island, but it's not something the HDC can solve. And neither can we incorporate those types of pieces of information into our decision-making process, because we would be acting outside of the act.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like?
Well, there is one comment I would like to follow
Yes.
up, if you don't mind, Madam Chair and the board. The concept was brought up that This is a selective enforcement. As we know, as many people in the town know, town offices that are regulatory or adjudicatory work on a complaint basis. It's simply a matter of human resources. And this is not a case of selective enforcement. I think that denotes an intentional, perhaps even borderline type of a malice, but certainly intentional disregard for others. We do at the HDC, administratively through our professional staff and through the commission, regularly review as-built conditions of all nature, not least of which are deer fence, cattle grates. Cattle grates are in Texas and Oklahoma. They're not a typical Nantucket feature. They are a rectilinear pattern that's highly visible as you walk by or drive by in a rural setting. Those are types of things that the HDC has become aware of and is strongly discouraging unless on a case-by-case basis, they are not visible, they are further within a property, so on and so forth. These are things you're aware of, but I think for the record, we want to put that out there. Thank you.
Kathy, did you have something to add?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you. I think that what Kurt probably was referring to when the town, I checked with one of my colleagues at Plus. The screening, I think, was through the planning board, and they have a different purview for screening than the HDC. So when they say the town, they probably meant the planning board when they were putting the property together. So that might be helpful.
Yes, rebuttals follow, so.
Mark Poor of Permit Plus was our permit person in probably 2005. And he's the one that got the permit passed through the HDC in 2000, before I built the property. And he verbally told me that. And then the homeowners told me that, the accountants told me that. It was all through the HDC. I have been trying to access the file for 5 months now, 6 months now, and every time we go there, they say it's out for scanning. So I've been trying to get that information. I've asked for it. I'm all I have is the word of Mark Poor that was there at the HDC meeting that said that he got that approved.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question? Do you know what year it was?
It's 2007 was when I started building it. So, I don't know exactly the day I came here to build the property.
I'm asking because I sat on the HDC at this point, and I kind of think that we might have done some screening requirements for the natural swimming pool that looks like a big pond there.
So the one thing about the homeowner too, the second that we finished everything inside of the property, the split rail fence was there, and he even took it in his own liberty to say, Kurt, go plant outside right on the edge of the split rail the whole way down, because he wanted to block it probably more than the town wanted to block it. And he's always willing to do anything to block it, but when the deer just eat literally everything that was just admitted from the other side to us, I mean, we're just at this standing point. Like, what do we do?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Ryan Douglas, yes, I see your hand up. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So just 2 points. So the first is that yes, this was before the HDC. It wasn't just the planning board, and I just wanted to clarify that for the record. And then the second point is I think there's some clarification that was just made by Mr. Welch. So it's on a complaint-based basis, which means that any complaint that's brought against any of the other 43 cattle grates would be absolutely enforced by the HDC. So that's my understanding then of that statement. In which case, I suppose there could be a lot of enforcement actions. Thank you.
Thank you. HDC rebuttals, Val?
I just want to say the whole deer fencing and cattle grate thing is out of control. No one seems to apply for it. Um, I don't know how we're going to get control of it because we don't have the staff to go around and look at every single property. People turn them in as they come up. I don't really know why we're arguing about this. If this person is so genuinely wants to screen himself and do the right thing for Nantucket, screen the fence. I mean, what's the big deal? And as far as caligrates go, I feel like it's a trend. I don't understand it. I don't really understand what it does, and that's not in our purview, but it's getting out of control as well. And I just feel like this is the kind of thing that is not building with Nantucket in mind, it's building with myself in mind, and it needs to stop. People have to go back and respect Nantucket and do what's right for Nantucket if they want to be here. And I think they do. So there shouldn't really be an argument. Thank you.
Can I rebuttal to that?
Yes, you can, and then I'm going to open it up for public comments.
So the reason why we sent a letter to the HCC was to ask, like, could we come out? We sent them a letter and said, can we come out to the property? Like, let's all meet out there and let's discuss this, right? I've had the cattle grates there for over 300 days, and I used to see 15, 20 deer. I live on the property, so I see it. I know it more than anybody. I see 15 deer out there when I'm walking around. They're eating everything. We put the cattle grates up. We put the deer fence up. 100% success rate. The only one time we've had a deer, human error. Somebody left the gate open. So as for the deer, as for the cattle grates, I don't see any justification why we have to remove them. They're flat. I've asked so many people what they think about it. They're way better than creating a gated community. Do we really want a gated community? Do we want just gates everywhere? Plus, mechanical errors, they break all the time. As for my boss willing to block the fence, everywhere around the property was 8 feet or more. We easily can plant anywhere you want to plant in front of it. That's why I wanted to have the meeting. And then anywhere on Nonantham, if we want to have a discussion and say, Kurt, move this fence back 4 feet, plant heavily in front of it. There's examples in the book that I made. The privet hedge is right in the middle and it's right on their property line. They've approved things like 3 hatch circle right off Bartlett. It's right on their property line. You can go see it. It's approved. I have the approval here with me and it's not blocked at all. We're willing to work with the town and do anything possible to keep the cattle grates where they are. And on the road of Nonantham, I will personally go out there, and if the complainant even wants to come and work on like, hey, I don't like seeing this gate, I'll move the gate. I'll move the fence. Like, but 20 feet, we can't do it. It's in the middle of the driveway. So we can't do it in certain properties. And then there's a huge 20-year-old tree that we planted there. You want me to go on this side of it, that side of it? Sure. The homeowner is willing to work with everyone.
Thank you.
I'll be brief, Madam Chair. An HCC approval doesn't constitute conformity. What I mean by that is what Kathy Flynn mentioned. Just because it was approved doesn't mean it's been inspected and doesn't mean it conforms with what was approved. So to say something has been approved and it's not in conformance could actually be very true. The HCC hasn't inspected it yet. When the inspector goes out, they'll determine if there's non-conformance. The person will get a notice. They'll come in front of the HDC. Eventually, the situation is rectified. In the meantime, they don't get a sign off on the work. There are gates on the property. The other thing is cattle grates. This is not part of. We're outside the realm of your decision making, I believe, and certainly outside the realm of the HDCs. But a hungry deer, many of you may know, can leap from a standstill a 7-foot tall fence. A hungry deer can span a 15-foot cattle grate in a half a second. So this gentleman's experience may be productive, but it doesn't mean that it's productive across the island. And it doesn't mean that the HDC is in a position based upon whether sometimes it's productive and sometimes it's not to allow a character changing feature. Again, those are typically Texas and Oklahoma, not Nantucket. This is not Texas and Oklahoma. This is rural Nantucket. I think that's pretty much it for now. You guys have got more than enough, I presume. Thanks.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Are there others from the public who wish to speak?
Just very briefly, Madam Chair, one
Yes,
comment.
sorry, I missed.
Sorry, one comment, and that's all, is that I think we're getting lost in the weeds here about deer and eating the vegetation. This is about selective enforcement. This is about, our other properties being getting enforcement orders on this, or are we singled out? I know that if you look at the meeting minutes and if you go back and you look at the original HDC hearing, there are certainly comments to suggest that. I just want to refocus our attention that this is about an arbitrary and capricious decision as applied to one property as opposed to other properties, and that therefore, if there are complaints brought against all 43 of these other properties, that the HDC would have to then take enforcement if they're going to be consistent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a sticky wicket. It has been for some time. Linda Williams for myself, actually, and former chair and vice chair of the HDC. I believe I was vice chair, Dawn was on it, when this came in almost 20 years ago. We spent more time on the screening than we spent on the actual structures. Once we moved the original older building over to the, I guess, northeast corner of that property onto a separate lot. We required so much screening and so much money and so much time. Back then, 20 years ago, perhaps deer weren't eating pitch pine. Perhaps they weren't eating everything they could get their little meager hands on, hooves on. In town, it's one thing, but when you've got these hinterlands, when everybody started to developing in the 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre areas of Nantucket, they became more closer to the deer. And when the deer has proliferated, as you could see by that article that came out today in Daybreak, they got 1,000 deer, which is a drop in the bucket. We're now arguing about the Schwartzes protecting what we asked them to put in. It doesn't make any sense, but I believe in 2007, we thought the deer weren't going to eat everything under the planet. Most of these deer fences, and I've had many approved and I've had cattle grates approved. Back in the day, historically, there were no Belgian block aprons. There were no macadam out in most of these areas. There were no bluestone patios. There were no pools. There were no certain kinds of walls. All of this stuff has evolved as people have changed how they build structures. They're building them out further out of town. The cattle grates are just another aspect of an at-grade architectural landscape feature. What should be developed at the HDC are standards of these deer fences, 24 feet apart, like I do them now, with an 8-inch square galvanized, which disappears completely 9 months of the year and are marginally visible 3 months of the year because they're embedded and the plantings tend to grow through them. Not the mesh, not the black vinyl, not the green vinyl, not the 1-inch squares. What the HDC should do is develop standards for deer fences and standards for cattle grates. But cattle grates should be
Point of order, Madam
considered.
Chair. We're well off topic. The HDC has standards established. This is determined arbitrary and capricious activity.
And it is arbitrary
Not,
and capricious.
not Linda imprinting her order of
Can I
standards
finish,
that are
please,
established.
without being interrupted?
There was a point of order.
It's not a point of order.
It is a point of order.
But either way,
It's a
they need-
public hearing and I have
Yeah.
to allow public
Public
comment,
hearing.
but I would appreciate it very much if you would stay on what's within our
Yes.
purview.
they are marginally visible, but asking people to move them in 20 feet arbitrarily a distance because they did not go and have the review of the property like I did last week is insane because it moves it into an open area and everything on the outside of it is going to be eaten by the deer. So there's got to be some common sense. I understand they're proliferating everywhere, but there's a reason why they're proliferating is because of the deer population. But to actually ask somebody to move it another 20 feet when it's already off the property line is arbitrary and capricious because you got to go view the properties on these things. There's so many coming into the HDC now, I don't see how they're going to view them all. But in this particular case, they were invited to the property to view it. So if nothing else, you got to remand it and have a full hearing on what's happening on this particular property. I'm not getting into an argument with the chairman. He knows how I feel about these
I would
things.
actually like to ask a question of the chairman, if you don't mind holding for a moment. I mean, is there any reason why they couldn't reapply and request a viewing to try and work this
Can
out
we
rather
actually
than it
take a
ending
step
up
back?
in court?
The presumption that the testimony of not having viewed is accurate is without basis. The property has been viewed. Images were provided in addition. The HDC determined, based upon its local established practice, a standard, if you will, of what is appropriate and what is not, that this was not appropriate, that this is not appropriate. So I think we need to take a step back, that just because someone insists on something, just because someone states something, just because someone asserts something, doesn't make it true. The HDC viewed this. Members who voted viewed this. Perhaps not all of them, but certainly the majority.
But my question was, could they reapply with a different proposal? Yes.
They may, however, if the proposal is for a deer fence and materially the same locations, but closer to the road than was approved, it is a waste of everyone's time. The decision has already been made. We reviewed a plan. We determined that the fencing in certain areas needed to be relocated, consistent with past practice. We being the HDC, the sitting members at the time. And we also determined that certain screening was in order. The determination's been made. Let's use an example of a pool. Somebody gets an approval for a pool. They don't like the pool approval. They come back with the same approval and they move it a foot. The HDC already made the determination of where that pool should be to be appropriate and what screening is appropriate in relation. So there's no value in remanding this. There's no value in, well, first of all, I think it's without basis if it were remanded. And second of all, it would be without change in result. If we are consistent in the application of our own standard, which I believe we are. Thank you.
I'm just going to close it. If an applicant, because I've done it, I just did it this week with an application that's particularly egregious. When an applicant asks for the board to take a viewing, it doesn't have to be in mass where you have to notice that you're meeting there in mass, but every member should go view it. Because if you can see it at this time of year, when all the leaves are off of everything, and it's not really that visible, 9 months of the year, it's not visible at all. But to arbitrarily ask somebody to move it 20 feet without seeing what the result of the 20 feet would be and where it would be sitting in the middle of a yard, in the middle of a driveway, next to a house. There's two structures at that end on the driveway, and the front driveway end, is arbitrary and capricious to me. As an applicant before the board, I had 20 things before the board this week. I'm there all the time.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't need any peanut gallery either. That's disrespectful. What I'm saying is that when we ask as applicants for people to come view, we expect them all to come view, and not just one and not just two. Steve goes out because he's out a lot, so he sees a lot of stuff. But these cattle grates are at grade. And I'm afraid if you support the HDC, this particular app, we've all been waiting for somebody to appeal from the select board to go to court. And anybody who was involved with the Martins Lane debacle, where we got smacked by the court and we got more restricted than we had anticipated as to what the HDC's jurisdiction was. And I was on the board then too. We may get smacked in court again.
Okay.
So they have to consider where this could go from here. But I think better standards on what the deer fences should and shouldn't look like, no matter where they are, is something that we would all love to have a conversation about in mass, those of us who deal with them, with the HDC, let's say an organizational meeting. If remand is not going to be possible, I'm afraid this is going to go farther.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just want to state, I understand, believe me, the HDC understands sitting there and trying to manage time. But we need to be clear too, this process that undertaken here is almost impossible for the HDC to make a regularly coherent response, rebuttals, without having to repeatedly come up to the podium. For instance, The HDC viewed the property. The HDC reviewed site plans in detail, scale drawings that show plant materials, that show structures, including the driveway. To assert that the HDC is putting a deer fence in the middle of a property, in the middle of a driveway, is inaccurate. So but I can't keep coming up here and rebutting these things. The other thing is this has come up in the past, and I really don't know how to say it without being frustrated. The HDC is a quasi adjudicatory authority. We do not make decisions based upon public input. We do not make decisions based upon public impressions. We make decisions based upon the elected officials' interpretation of building with Nantucket in mind, local past practices, established rules and regulations, and best practices. If the HCC is going to go down the route of being forced to have meetings to discuss what's appropriate, you guys are going to be looking at appeals forever, because that is not a standard that we can uphold. Oh, well, we had a discussion with the public in 2026 and we decided this. Well, in 2028, the public sentiment changed and we decided something contrary. I would suggest that you not consider that type of logic. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I have to just
Brian Douglas. Yeah.
I have to just briefly, Mr. Welch has said that the HGC doesn't take public input into account, but he also just said moments ago that they do things on a complaint basis, which is taking public input into account. And look, I understand that the HGC is a small, and I see Mr. Welch getting up again. We really need to stop this so that we can get to actual public comment. But I understand that it's a small board. But saying that they don't have the capacity to go around and enforce everything is making the very point that the enforcement is arbitrary and capricious because they're not able to do it consistently across the board. I understand that that's something where it's constrained to the amount of people who are able to do it, but at the same time, from a legal basis, it is arbitrary and capricious, and that's something that, when you're looking at other boards, certainly the Superior Court has held that many, many times over. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Malcolm, you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up a little bit on what you said about I've heard the HTC did not view the site, and I've heard the HTC did view the site. Was there a member of the HTC that went out there or not?
Multiple.
Okay, so you did physically look at the site.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Val?
Physically look at the site and also take photos. So yes.
Could I say
Yes,
something?
Brooke?
I was up here
Yeah,
before you guys.
one moment. I'm just going to.
So it sounds to me that what the appellant was hoping for was an on-site walkthrough with the homeowner or their representatives, in which the HDC's process is that the commissioners go and view the property when they're able to on their own, rather than having an on-site meeting with the property owner. I think that's the discrepancy we're hearing in terms of viewing or not viewing the property, as I understand it. I hope that is correct, but that's my understanding of what the discrepancy in perspective is on this.
Is there any disagreement with that?
Yeah, I'd like to clarify. The HCC doesn't schedule on-site meetings. If we schedule an on-site meeting with every applicant who wanted to get pre-design input or be able to say, well, the HCC told me this in an on-site meeting, it's just it's a path to discord, disarray, and a lack of coherent, systematic processing of applications. Number two, I just want to clarify. Again, I'm in this position. I would much rather be home having my bamboo Chinese dinner that got flown in yesterday. A complaint versus a review. The applicant's attorneys, there's two of them, by the way, I think you probably noticed, is confounding the concept of complaints with review. What I mean by that is the HDC The Historic District Commission is an elected and appointed body that that performs architectural review. I'm not going to get into the details. That's enough. The HCC professional staff, who are employees of the town, process complaints. The HCC doesn't make a determination which complaint to pursue. Complaint letter goes out. The property owner responds. They present documentation. It gets presented to the commission for review. To suggest that the HDC is somehow complicit in selective enforcement because of a process it has no control over, which is the complaint process and the process of when and if a violator submits documents for review, confusing that with the fact that the HCC performs a review. This was a judicious review based upon local past practice and standards. There's a documented history of it over the last however long we've been doing evolving the review of deer fence and gates and cattle grates. So I just want to be really clear. There are two very distinct, separate parts of a process, but the HDC does not involve itself in which properties it hears, which it processes, which properties it will accept or process complaints on.
I think we understand that.
And Madam Chair, that just proves my point. Thank you so much.
Tom?
Yeah, at the risk of stating something obvious here, I would think that the site visits are partially expediency because you'd have to post a meeting and it would be a quorum and you can't deliberate. So that's another reason why I think that just happens naturally. Yeah.
I still come back to, so for practical purposes, and while the public hearing is still open, we can either, and George Pucci is online if we need advisement, we can either remand this decision, we can uphold this decision, we can overturn this decision. But what I've heard tonight is that the applicant is willing to make changes. So I don't really fully understand why they couldn't come back, regardless of us, with a new proposal that say weaves around an old tree or takes out the cattle grate portion, or, it's not for me to substitute what the proposal is going to be, but it seems as a practical matter because the other thing that we have to approve is the funding for this to go to court if it does. So I just want to be a little bit more practical about these things is there a way to work this out so we don't end up there? We generally always want to support the HDC in their decision-making process, but when an applicant seems very willing to make alterations, could they try and do that before we even make a decision?
May I respond, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the opportunity to make those changes was when the application was in front of the HDC. The opportunity was available to them. They decide the changes that they're willing to make, as stated by the gentleman across the aisle, is that 20 feet is too much. So basically what they're saying is, let's use the analogy of a pool. My Olympic pool that you cut down in half because of character and setting, it's too small. We're going to go to the select board and we're going to say, hey, we're willing to make changes. Sure, we want to make changes. We want a bigger pool. No, that's not how the process works. When does it end? If you've determined that, oh, the HCC said this is outside the bounds of character and setting, but acceptable subject to X, Y, and Z, distance, screening, so on and so forth. What happens then, and I want to get to the court thing in a very quick second, is, well, we'll appeal it. And then the select board is afraid of going to court or spending the money. So we are going to send it back to the HCC for a discussion. When does that rationale, when does that approach end? That brings me to the point I want to make. The HCC is empowered and it hasn't had to exercise this authority, but under the act, to raise its own funds and to expend them. It's in the four corners of the document. So if we're not the Zoning Board of Appeals, we're not the Planning Board, we're not the county, the Concom. The HDC is a commission established under a special act, much like NPDC. We have the authority under our act. Now, I'm sure there'll be a lot of litigation, and I'm sure the town's attorney will have something else to say. If the town isn't going to support the HDC because it's afraid of court costs to remedy the situation ourselves, our fees haven't changed in over a decade. So, and there are a lot of people on this island who are voters, who are impassioned, who believe the HDC's mission and role and its delivery are important and will support that type of an approach. So I think it's a bad path to go down. I think we should stick to, please, was the HDC decision not who submitted the complaint, not how it was processed, because the HDC staff is not actually historic district commission staff. They are town and Nantucket staff. But did the elected appointed officials make a decision that was arbitrary and capricious? That is not a warranted decision. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, just for the record, we are willing, to reiterate, we are willing to work. We're willing to do screening. I've even spoken with the applicant, and I know that we are even willing to potentially, and I need some clarification on this from the applicant, but I believe we're even willing to move the fence. Now, 20 feet would put it in the middle of the driveway. But I know that we would be willing to increase to move it further than it would be, I believe, after speaking with the applicant. And look, I know that Mr. Welch is getting back up again. We really cannot keep going back and forth here.
Why-
And the way that
Why
this
did
would,
you not make these alterations during the process?
we offered to make we offered to have the board come out so that we could talk about what alterations to make. But that, first of all, my client was not allowed to speak at the HDC hearing. If you go back and look at the video, you'll see that. And then the second point is that when we offered to make concessions, the HDC just completely ignored us and didn't even get back to us. We want to work with the town. We are absolutely willing to work with the town. And the way that this would work is if we go to court halfway through discovery, George and I would come to a deal where we move it X amount of feet as opposed to the whole way because we're now $200,000 down in litigation. I mean, it's going to come to the same practical conclusion no matter whether we go to court or we solve this now. It's just going to cost more money if we go do it one way. So, and hi, George. Good to see you.
Thank you. Hi, George. I don't appreciate the inference that I'm afraid of defending the HDC by spending money. I was just trying to be practical about the fact that we have an applicant who is saying, I'll work with you. Like, I mean, applications change all the time for various different reasons. Someone might have an Olympic swimming pool approved with tons of screening, and they say, I can't afford to do that, and I want to come back with something totally downsized. You would hear that application. So,
but Madam Chair, if I may, that is not what's being discussed here. They are saying that you have requested we move the fence too far back, and we do not accept that. So we want to tell the select board that we're willing to work it out with the HDC, and we don't want you to spend $200,000 and so on and so forth. This isn't a changed application. This isn't a house that came in and now they want to change the house. They want something the HCC told them was inappropriate. It's very simple. And I'm
tried to change it.
Understanding that. And I don't understand if it seems that I'm being very effective if a well-paid, accomplished attorney has to rebut everything I say. So kudos for the HDC and trying to get something accomplished here. I want to deal with a couple quick things. One, moving this fence. The fence is perpendicular to the driveway. Stating it is in the middle of the driveway mischaracterizes many things. Number two, my recollection of this application was that there wasn't very much, oh, we want to work it out at the table discussion. It was, well, this is how it is. We don't understand why you won't let us have it. And at a certain point in discussion, which I'm sure you're getting to very closely, you say enough is enough and you make a decision. And that's what the HDC did. Now they want a second bite of the apple, the same apple. They want a bigger bite than they were told is appropriate. Thank you.
Does anybody have questions for George?
Can I say something?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a lot of things that are coming out of, is it Steven's mouth that they just don't add up. If you watch the video on August 12th, Katie was my representative. She might have got 2 words in the entire time. So for us to try to talk, that just didn't happen. That being said, in that same meeting, Val, I don't know Val at all, but I watched the video over and over again. Sorry, no, Angus.
Okay, let's just
It
try
was-
to stop having
it
a
was
back and
Angus.
forth.
Angus quotes, "There are places along the Nantucket that were not visible, and this would be the goal to achieve. This is our goal, but without chopping down pre-existing material, that like we can't achieve that in certain places." So Angus stated that when this person toured the property, that there were sections along Nantucket that you couldn't see the fence. Down all of Nantucket, I have a plan here that if you would like to check it out, there's measurements on it. There's a Gardner garage, the entrance to the bay that the guys have to drive a golf cart out of, that was approved, is less than 20, it's like maybe 20 feet to the front of that garage. There's that.
So
Then if you
I
go
don't want to
down
get deep
to
into
driveway
the
that he
merits.
specifically said he went and looked at, it's 13 feet to the driveway. I can, like, if you want to check this
No,
out, you can.
because we can't substitute
But
our review for
just-
the HDCs. What I'm trying to suggest is that if you're willing to make changes somewhere in between what you ultimately want and what they approved, and you have reasoning to back it up, why don't you just apply again?
With the fence, I asked the 4 different permit people, I asked the lawyer, and then we sent a letter to them. They completely ignored us. They didn't even respond to it. They wouldn't even respond, say thanks for the letter, nothing. They're now providing you information that is completely false. There's a driveway that's 13 feet off of the property line. I had the property surveyed, went out there, measured it myself to double, triple check. I live there. There's a gardening area also. It's not possible to move it in. I've admitted to you that anywhere else down the line, we can adjust those things 100%. That's not a problem at all. But to state that the driveway is parallel and it's all way out of 20 feet is a complete lie.
Kathy?
Madam Chair, through you, to Kurt, we didn't receive a letter from him after the meeting, so I apologize. We didn't receive anything.
We have a certified letter.
Oh.
Yeah, it needs to be picked up by the mic. Campbell, did you have a comment?
Yes, and I'm not affiliated with anything.
It's a public hearing, so we're taking
That's what
public
I was
comment.
hoping for. Anyway, so Campbell Sutton. So I've been listening quite a bit, and one of the things I'm a little confused at is this is a pre-existing condition, right? This structure went in 2007. We did not have deer fences and the cattle grates as we have now. And if all it takes is your neighbor complaining, then, look out, there's a lot of stuff coming if that's what's going to bring this forward. But this is a pre-existing condition in which the HDC, even if it was through the planning board sort of would say screening, the HDC would be approving that screening. So they're trying to protect a pre-existing condition. This is not a new situation in which everything's just been built and they've just put this fence in. So it is quite hard to find appropriate plantings that are not deer friendly. Okay, you could put a privet in front of the whole thing. It's a very invasive plant, but it seems to be somewhat popular in terms of covering fences. I'm just thinking we're getting a little carried away, and it starts to sound like this is a new application and a new build, and it's not. It's trying to protect property and expenditures that were requested at the get-go. And I think given that it is it should be anyway, within the town or HDC's purview to work with a client for which they required something, and now that something is under threat, and they need to work together to create the fencing that's going to be appropriate and not at odds with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Tori?
Good evening, everybody. Victoria Ewing. On behalf of one of my many clients, first and foremost, Andrew Wing of Wingworks Landscape, to whom it may concern, I'm encouraged that the issues related to deer protection have come before you. I apologize for not being there in person, but I'm traveling with my family, unable to attend. Wingworks has been embroiled for many months, countless clerical hours, and thousands of dollars in application and agent fees with several HDC applications for different aspects of deer protection. Most notably, applications for cattle grates have completely stalled. The unfortunate truth is that Nantucket has a huge overpopulation problem with the current deer herd. Deer themselves are not indigenous to the island and have become the single most problematic invasive species to the island. Aside from other very pressing health and safety issues, the deer present an exasperating challenge to landscapers. At one time, the argument for use of predominantly native deer-resistant plant species was driven to the destruction of most of those predominantly native deer-resistant plant species was viable to control damage. The current herd is, however, starving to death and have been driven to the destruction of most of those previously deer-resistant varieties of native plants. The Nantucket deer population eats, or at the very least samples, and thereby destroys everything. The estate gardens, large and small, being designed and installed on Nantucket are world caliber. Clients are investing cumulatively and individually millions of dollars in their landscaping, with at least some of that cost being driven by screening required by the HDC. There is a huge disconnect, and there are no clear practical guidelines on what tools we have to protect these landscapes from the single most destructive element on the island. We have fencing and gate rules, which have no particular practical relevance to animals that clearly clear 6-foot structures. We have no practical guidelines to help us to install acceptable infrastructure to control this enormous and costly problem. We need an arsenal of allowable fencing styles applicable specifically to the deer protection issue. If we had guidelines, I can only imagine the wasted hours and endless frustrations endured that could be avoided with these applications. No one has time to pursue a 6-month process to get a fence approved. The HDC's aversion to cattle grates in particular is mystifying to me. We frequently hear boards members lamenting the emergence of gated estates. To discount the merits of below grade and completely unobtrusive structures that serve effectively as a perfect alternative to entrance gating seems to me completely arbitrary. These are submerged, highly effective, unobtrusive deterrent elements that can easily be dressed up for an even further diminished presence with common hardscape application, and they work without a gate. I strongly urge appropriate town representatives to help us to navigate this costly and relentless issue of allowable deer protection. The deer are not going away. Local appetite for high and landscape installation is not going to wane. Property owners should have the right as well as the tools to protect their properties and their investments. Please work to clarify allowable practical infrastructure specific to deer protection and to provide guidelines to help expedite applications for installation of these structures. And if I could, Madam Chair and Board, personally, as a member of the public, in addition to my representation of one of many clients, as a member of the public and a local professional mitigating these various requests on behalf of both property owners and local contractors, I firmly believe that the concerns, experience, and documentation of local contractors to be of tremendous value. These individuals have been on the ground for decades, and their input is imperative, in my opinion, in all of us making educated decisions. The specific experience I have had both personally and professionally, in addition to presentations I have witnessed when it comes to the regulatory process required when applying for these various features, whether it be a proposed perimeter deer fence, cattle grate, or driveway gate, either individually or as a combined application for some or all of these features. My experience has been that each review has been very different. There are voluminous examples of certain applications being approved without the same scrutiny as others. In addition to specific, at times unwarranted, requirements being placed on various property owners, but not all property owners, in a consistent manner. In conclusion, we as a community are asking for you all to consider significant regulatory standards that are needed regarding this area of concern, that we can all refer to more efficiently, advise others correctly, and therefore execute a solution for all involved that is accessible to all professionals, agents, and property owners alike. This will go a long way to avoid the current experience an individual tolerates, which continues to be arbitrary and capricious. Thank you.
Val? I'd just say very briefly, every application is taken individually on its own merit, depending where it is. So they are not all across the board the same. For instance, being out in a beach in a rural area is significantly different being in a development that has houses very close together. The criteria is different. I like the idea of having some sort of collaborative effort, and I welcome somebody spearheading that. We as volunteers couldn't possibly come up with enough time to deal with every single little thing that comes up as things evolve. And deer fencing is out of control, and I agree. I think our biggest concern is screening it. I get it. Deer eat stuff. Maybe there's a different solution for deer. That's not in our purview. But, you know, lumping everything together and throwing it out like we're not fair to people across the board. Everything is individually looked at. I resent that comment. And I would just say, I'd like to move this along, please, because we have something else coming up and this is getting crazy.
Stephen?
Madam Chair, so the example has just been made. Actually, the example has been made of my earlier comment that the value of this process seems to be undermined by the process itself. If I understand correctly, you all are here to review the HTC's actions after the fact, not retrospectively, taking into consideration information and comment that the HTC does not have in advance and cannot prepare adequately for, that flavors discussion or your perceptions. That I don't recall it. I always thought that these were a public meeting out of diligence and respect, but that they weren't a public hearing where 15 people could come in with 15 different arguments, all of which could persuade you after the fact. But your role, my understanding, was not to consider all these different perspectives after the fact, but in your own judgment as elected officials to weigh the merits of the information on the record. I believe that that was in your policy at one point, was that what is acceptable for review is what is on the record, and not was what on the record as of the date the appeal went in after, but what is on the record leading up to and informing the process of the hearing and the determination. So I urge you to please reconsider this process, because as a facilitator, if I have to be redundant, I will. That was mentioned to me earlier. But as a facilitator, as an HDC chair, my role is to stand up and defend a righteous decision. So I'll just keep coming to the podium and keep doing my best to respond. But this, I hope I have stated with clarity what I believe as a person of process see as a fault. And I hope you will take it in the intent, in the spirit and intent that it was conveyed. It is not to be critical of you, it is critical of the process and the fact that I believe it undermines what it is you're actually here to do. Thank you.
Brooke?
I have a specific question. It was mentioned at some point that the applicant was not felt like they weren't permitted to speak during when this application was being heard. I'm not asking about what is generally the HDC's policy on hearing from the applicants themselves.
We try to adhere to a 2-minute timer. If people become combatant, they are met with, as I've witnessed here repeatedly, when people become combatant, combative in discussion. They are met with a sometimes curt, very direct reply. I will note the HDC does not have public hearings.
I
So,
understand.
but I just want to be really clear because we are not, to my understanding, required to uphold the freedom of speech type of approach that you all are, that this public hearing engenders. This is about, we are to listen to the subject matter. And if people cannot speak on the subject matter, then the HDC is within its rights to shut down the discussion.
Thank you. You answered my question in the first 30 seconds. Thanks.
Yep. And we are not supposed to consider new information. We are supposed to go on the record of how the decision was made. And I stated that at the beginning, but it is a public hearing. And during a public hearing, I do have to allow any member of the public to make a statement. The issue that I'm continuing to have is that if an applicant gets an approval after not having a public hearing where they're limited on what on having a back and forth interaction, why can't they come back with a new proposal? I mean, you're basically saying that, well, we wouldn't approve anything else than what we did.
I did not mean to create an impression, and that impression I think was certainly created by others, that the HDC ignored comment. It's often been said the HDC eats with its eyes. It's kind of like when you do a building inspection. You have a code, you have a guide, you have regulations. You go in, you take a look, it speaks for itself. We don't need someone to explain their perspective on why this is beneficial when what we're reviewing are elements, exterior architectural features of buildings and structures and material as to whether they're appropriate for the character and setting. The discussion points are typically explanative of why it should be allowed, even though it is in violation or atypical or inappropriate. So the discussion is not an element, an operative element, unless the HDC, which it does openly, ask questions for a clear understanding of what's being presented. On your point, again, the applicant is welcome to come back with a new application. What the chair, on behalf of the Historic District Commission and the community and you all, was simply stating in different words now, is that to come to the select board to force the HDC to review an application again, I believe, on behalf of the HDC, is a very bad precedent.
That's mainly what I'm getting at is I would like to continue this public hearing and allow them to go back with a new application, not remand it.
I think
I would like to leave it open,
So
is what I'm suggesting.
Madam Chair, I really think that you've seen that there's something against my client, my boss, and since the meeting, the first HTC meeting, we've complied the entire time. We got the letter, we immediately complied. And at this meeting, if you watch the meeting, he never let Katie speak at all. And then he starts the conversation off. This Val states, and these are quotes that I took straight off the video. Val states, "This guy does whatever he wants," to my boss. Now, is there any proof of that? There's only proof of my boss getting every permit imaginable that has ever happened on that property. Steven says,
okay, well, let's
one sec. Steven says cattle grates don't work at all. He has no proof of this. Val quotes, "I want people to get fines that are really going to hurt." Then Steven quotes,
okay, well,
"That's getting rid of cattle grates." He wants my boss to he says right here, one more thing. It's like, right here, two quotes from Steven. It's like, one, the change that he wants us to change, get rid of the cattle grates and move the entire fence back, that won't work, is the equivalent of, for my boss, 2 scoops at Yezi's. That's what he says, exact quotes. Another quote says, "Maybe this will be written up in the newspaper to show people that this isn't appropriate." We've been trying to work. They clearly have showed that they don't want to work with us.
Madam Chair, I've never said anything like that, and I would love to listen to the tape. And in fact, I will. The point I wanted to get to is
In the meeting minutes.
Val's comments were with
The tape, sorry.
respect. Thank you. I appreciate your interrupting me, high-paid attorney. What
all right,
Val
we need-
what Val was referring to, well, someone needs to control the meeting. If I'm being interrupted, I didn't interrupt that fella.
You actually came to the mic and started speaking before I recognized
I
you.
apologize for that.
So why don't we just do an entire reset? I'm going to take a 2-minute break.
Yeah.
because I have to go to the restroom. Okay, as has been pointed out, I need to get control of this room. So could everyone keep the side chatter could everyone be quiet? Malcolm has had his hand up, so I'm going to recognize Malcolm McNabb.
Yeah, I've heard some things that trouble me a bit. I would really like to continue this hearing. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I did not look at the tape of the meeting. And I think it's important from my perspective of learning if this was capricious or not till I actually see how people spoke and whether there was any preconceived ideas. So that's what I would like, Madam Chair.
May I follow up on that for a question for town council?
Yeah, George,
Mr.
can you come
Pucci?
on?
Sorry, I forgot that I shut off my camera. Here I am.
That's all right. So, part of our purview is process, right? So to Malcolm's point, if we look at a video of a meeting, and I'm just, for lack of a better way to describe it, it appears that there's sort of a prescribed bias going into the review of the application. Does that fall under the purview of process?
Yes, first of all, good evening, Madam Chair and everyone from the board. This is George Pucci from KP Law. And just to give some background about my role here, I'm not here to advocate on behalf of any town board or anyone else. I'm just here as town council at the select board's direction to provide you advice and guidance in accordance with questions that you asked me. So hopefully I don't offend anyone from the HDC or anybody else by my advice. I really try to just play it to have a responsive answer to your question. And so to answer that, Brooke, yes, it would be, it's totally within your purview on appeal to look at process. Malcolm's desire to review the videotape of the HTC meeting is entirely appropriate and also within your purview. I also think that it's well within your purview and jurisdiction to continue this public hearing to another night if it would be helpful for the board members in terms of their deliberations.
If we're going to continue the public hearing, it will need to be to a date certain.
Correct.
Welch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to apologize to the board for my inarticulate statement, which was meant to convey that I am not a high-priced attorney. What I mean by that is this is not what I do for a living. I do not stand up on my feet, counterpoint, endlessly rebutting new information that's brought forth. This is not my forte. So when I said high-priced attorney, I was simply stating this isn't what I do. There's a couple of guys here who are doing that, and I'm doing the best I can. Number two, I think it's important. Context is important. I can zoom into a select board meeting, and I can watch some of the things that happen, and I can think, wow. And I'm not saying you, Madam Chair, but the Madam Chair was really abrupt. She was really short with that person. Oh my God, what the hell's going on? But without the context of the understanding of the background. So I think one of the important elements of the context of the background is the applicant's agent or the live-in. I'm not really sure what the gentleman's role is, but has stated that there was a pre-prejudicial. The concern that are voiced and articulated in the tone of voice at the HTC with this matter is that in fact, this gentleman is not meeting all the town requirements, applying for every permit that's required, going through the process. He installed a huge, per square footage, acreage amount of fence, and then came in and dictated by tone that you may or may not pick up on tape, then this is how that this should be okay. And then you get responses from members who are frustrated. You can determine what you want from that, but I think the context is important. So I wanted to state that before you close the public hearing. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I kind of have a request here. Mr. Fortin and Mr. Douglas, right, wrote this letter that goes in the file. And we're supposed to very much adhere to what's in the file, right, and present it to us. These, I say allegations, that sounds really strong, but whatever, for lack of better things, that Mr. Fortin is bringing up about HTC meetings, right? I think that should be in a letter to us stating the timestamps and kind of what the general feeling was and how they felt prejudiced by those alleged moments. Because otherwise we're just having like back and forth talk here. And I don't think that's enough for me anyway tonight to go off of. So I would, through the board, if the chair and the board agrees, to request further documentation on anything that you have said tonight to go into our file.
And we would certainly
I
be
think you
willing
are
to provide
you are
that.
also requesting the timestamps so that we can review the recorded meeting file.
We would certainly be willing to supplement that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Charity Benz is.
Yeah, Charity Benz has her hand up, and this is a public hearing.
Thank you. I have listened to this entire thing, and it reminds me of a fortune cookie I got many years ago and tried to follow, and that is the tongue is the greatest enemy of the throat. And this whole discussion clearly documents that. And I think the suggestion that you continue the hearing and that you do go back and you look at whether or not there is bias is appropriate. Thank you.
did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. I understand Board Member Dixon's request. I want to reiterate, without the context of the entire hearing, that information, we can cherry pick certain statements by individuals, and it doesn't provide a full and fair understanding. However, you determine your review. If all you're doing is focusing on timestamps, cherry picked, the HTC staff, who are Town of Nantucket employees, plus employees who help the HTC, do not have time to be going through applications as a precedent that this will be setting, tapes, indicating by timestamp all the different comments that are made, nor does the HTC elected officials who are volunteers. So I understand why you want them. I'm not questioning your authority to request them. Simply asking as a courtesy to the HTC that you review the entirety of the tape because it's relevant. Thank you.
That's what I was going to ask for, is the entirety of this hearing. HDC meetings are 5 hours long, but this particular, I don't want you to pick out one sentence. I want to know when to log into the entire application. And the other thing I would suggest
And
is
Don,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I should interject, and I'm sure that this is the understanding of the board. You're not basing your entire decision on this. This is just some further information and review that board members have requested. It's not necessarily determinative of your ultimate decision on this. I just wanted to clarify that there's a lot of information before you. There's a lot before you to consider. If you continue the hearing, you're going to have further discussions of it at the next hearing. I just wanted to make sure and caution the board that
yes,
you're not continuing it only to hear one particular item and you're going to determine it based on that. So I just wanted to clarify
George,
that.
That's correct. I think that we just all wanted to go back and watch the tape for the full context of this particular application, because we did not do that piece. Kathy?
Madam Chair, through you, so that all of my appeal letters, I always try to I put the links to the meetings and the timestamps. So I hope that that's helpful. And it's in this one as well.
Oh, okay. Well, then we already have it.
Madam Chair, just a minor clarification on what I was saying. Part of the reason that we have packets is to build the public record, right? So we have back and forth and some conjecture and some statements, right? If there's a letter, it will go in our packet for the next hearing. The HTC members can see it, they can react to it, and then everyone's coming in on equal footing. It's a level setting. At this moment, we're just hearing one thing or hearing other without having seen the full record. That's all I'm trying to say, is that I don't feel comfortable weighing any piece of that information and then having that hang out there, right? Because that's not going to be probably the basis of our decision, but it is a part of this.
One final comment.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I provide the letter also? You asked to put things in the file, and one thing I did not provide in there was the certified letter that we sent to the HTC that they never replied back to.
I would suggest scanning that and emailing it to HTC administration.
Okay.
And you can send it to town administration as well.
Okay. Both of you guys too. Okay. Thank you.
So if we're going to, I think we're leaning toward continuing this hearing. Do we have a recommended date? Anybody?
I guess it depends on how much time you think you need. And are you continuing it just to review documentation, or are you continuing it in hopes that the appellant will submit a new application to the HDC? Because if that's the case, you're going to need to continue it for months. If it's just to review, you might need 2 weeks.
I mean, my preference would be for the applicant to reapply with something that they think might be approvable.
Yeah, if that happened too, remember, they could always notify you of that and you could take off the hearing. We
could continue it again. So
Right.
why don't we start by continuing it for 2 weeks?
How's the schedule look?
Be March 4th.
March 4th is impossible for me. I apologize.
I was actually going to say 2 meetings, not 2 weeks.
So March 11th.
So March 11th. Does that work for you, George?
Yes, I'll make it work. Yeah.
Okay, so
And
I'm make a
Attorney
motion-
Douglas,
Oh,
does
you have
that work for you?
March 11th works for me. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Stephen, does that
Sorry,
work
Madam
for
Chair.
you?
Yeah, the HCC can't commit to that at this point. We don't know what's going on. There's other members I need to canvass to see who's available. If I'm not available, I have personal matters and family matters that I'm addressing in March.
Okay. Well, for now, we'll continue it.
That's
and
fine, just
then
so you're aware. I
You
didn't
can
want it
be
to
in
be a
touch with us
surprise.
and ask for a further continuance so we can coordinate everyone.
Yeah, I move that we continue the public hearing to March 11th.
Is
I
there a
second that.
Oh, Malcolm seconded. All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you all. That is continued.
Thank you.
Next up, we have public hearing number 2 for an HDC appeal to consider the appeal of Axmart Energy of Historic District Commission approval of certificate of appropriateness number HDC 2025-08-13115 with conditions to install solar panels at 65 Pulpus Road, map 43, parcel 13. I am opening the public hearing and I will go to the appellant for their argument. Just try and be concise.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I don't have any counsel with me this evening. I would like to keep it short, concise. My name is Tobias Glidden. I'm representing Axmart and our client, the Wallaces.
Madam Chair, just to be clear, I am a client of Axmart. I have had an approval for a rooftop solar on my property. I feel I can address this without bias, but I just want to make that statement for the record.
Thank you. I just want to start out, I have 5 minutes, so I'll just be very brief. This application, the concern is about solar on the front of the structure. It's located at 65 Pulpus Road. You'll see in the packet, there is 4 other solar arrays that are on buildings. 2 of them are on the front of buildings, historic buildings, through the fence, ironically, at Moore's End Farm. And the proposal was to put some solar on the front, and that was denied by the HDC. That's kind of the context on Pulpus Road. There's been a large amount of development around there recently, but that's just kind of a brief context. And then I'd like to just read a statement beyond what's in the packet. And I'd like to just focus really on, what the enabling legislation is, what the guidelines from 2009 are for today. So I'm appealing the HDC decision to restrict solar panels at 65 Pulpus Road based on concerns about the front-facing visibility. My first point is simple and important. The term front or front-facing does not appear anywhere in the HDC's photovoltaic solar thermal guidelines. Section 4 of those guidelines does not prohibit front roof installations. Instead, it requires a case-by-case evaluation focused on scale, proportion, materials, color, and contextual awareness. There's solar across the street on the front of buildings. The commission's decision relied on a standard that does not exist in the written language. It would say front, they're guidelines specific beyond the enabling legislation. My second point, the proposal met all design criteria. The panels are flush mounted, matte black, non-reflective, and aligned with the roof plane. And we even proposed to paint the roof black. They do not alter the building's massing, the height, the architectural form, the architectural context of the property, along with existing structures and utilities. This establishes a working landscape where modern systems are appropriate and expected. There are hundreds of visible solar arrays on the island. This isn't a question about visibility. Third, solar energy directly advances the purpose of the Historic District Act. In Section 2, which is where it really starts, the act says, quote, to promote the general welfare of the inhabitants of the town of Nantucket. We're trying to save people on Nantucket money. We would submit that that promotes their general welfare. And through the benefits resulting to the economy, renewable energy supports year-round residents, it supports agriculture, it supports affordability while protecting the environmental conditions that sustain Nantucket's economy. Sustainability is not contrary to preservation, it is essential to it. And then I have my fourth point, and I'll wrap up. Solar is utility infrastructure. As you drove up here today, you saw utility poles down Fairgrounds Road. Right out front of this building, we have a transformer. None of those were approved. Electric poles, transformers, meters, overhead wires, many of which are highly visible and not regulated by the Historic District Commission. Solar panels are directly tied into the same electrical grid and governed by state utility interconnection rules. Treating solar differently than utility infrastructure is inconsistent, especially when roof-mounted solar is far less visual impact than existing utility infrastructure along Hopeless Road. I've attended 300 plus HDC meetings. I have never seen National Grid once for a utility pole for a transformer. They were here recently to tear down a historic building, but there's never have they appeared before the HDC for a purpose of a pole or piece of infrastructure, a structure. So finally, I'm submitting that it's an inconsistent standard. Visibility alone is not a legal basis for denial. The act explicitly limits the commission's authority, stating that it shall not make any recommendations or requirements except for the purpose of preventing developments incongruous with the historic aspects of the surroundings. The proposed installation is not incongruous. It is discreet, demure, and appropriate to both the building and the setting. For these reasons, I respectfully ask the Select Board to overturn the HDC's conditional denial and approve the solar installation as proposed. Doing so aligns with the Act, adopted guidelines, and Nantucket's sustainability goals and the general welfare of the island. Thank you.
HTC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kathy Flynn, Land Use Specialist for the town. So I think you all read the agency response in the letter in the packet. So I don't have really much more to add. The application was reviewed at 2 meetings. The commissioners voted to take a view of the property, as seen from Kelly Road and Pulpus Road. They made a conditional approval based on their purview and what could be seen from a publicly traveled way. The property owner had the choice of moving forward with an approval for the solar panels on the back of the house, or if they wanted to place them on the front of the house, they would have to change the roof to be black and relocate the driveway to allow for screening from Pulpus and Kelly Road. The commission practiced their due diligence by following the solar guidelines, which is a local policy adopted in 2009. They based their approval on visibility, not utility, infrastructure, or energy resilience. And for the benefit of those who are watching this appeal, in a publication titled Energy Efficiency, Renewable Energy, and Historic Preservation, a Guide for Historic District Commissions, which is published by the Clean Air, Cool Planet, the Nantucket Solar Guidelines serve as a case study for other historic districts in the country. So something to be proud of. Thank you.
And thank you. I'm seeing your timestamped links now. And from now on, I'll make sure I watch the tapes for these. Stephen.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Stephen Welch, Chair of the HTC. I was actually going to ask for a recess for a few minutes. I am not accustomed to this type of circumstance and transitioning from, being in a boxing ring to then a fresh face on a brand new topic. I am learning grace and serenity, and I'll do my best. My natural state is fight or flight, and I'm not a flight.
Do you want to take a minute?
No, I had a minute to breathe, and Tobias reminded me of how, despite having differences of opinion, he's never been disagreeable. He tries to argue the merits without attack ad hominem attacks. It would be beneficial for others, I believe, and then the HTC doesn't lower itself into the same dirt. But in any event, try and go quickly on this. I'll be referencing the solar guidelines, placement and design of photovoltaic and solar thermal systems from excerpted from the Sustainable Preservation and Addendum to Building with Nantucket in Mind. I'll be brief. Before I do that, I want to read the relevant portion of the HTC's under the Act. The purpose of this Act is to promote this is the Act being to establish the Historic District Commission. The purpose of this Act is to promote the general welfare of the inhabitants of the town of Nantucket through the preservation and protection of historic buildings, places, and districts of historic interest through the development of an appropriate setting for these buildings, places, and districts. The area in question is a rural area with a farm. It is historically low-strung structures. Roofs on Nantucket are, bear with me a moment. This is from the reference material. The sloped roofs typical of Nantucket's built environment are character-defining feature of the island's cultural heritage. John McLaughlin, our Commissioner Emeritus, used to refer to roofs as primarily one of the main aspects of review because they're what's most visible of many homes. So certainly relevant. What's also relevant is that we've covered the definition of a structure, architectural or exterior architectural features were brought up. I mentioned that because I will now go back to the, let's see, the argument is that the Commission's decision to condition approval based solely on the front roof plane orientation introduces an unauthorized categorical standard that exceeds the scope of the Act and its adopted regulations, which only contemplate contextual judgment. There's a lot there. I'm not going to try and unpack it. Clearly, character and setting, roofs are relevant. It's established in the Act. It's established in the excerpt from Sustainable Preservation, which is an addendum to Building with Nantucket in Mind. In addition, within the addendum to Building with Nantucket in Mind, there are graphical representations. One of them, under not recommended, is a figure that indicates contextually and in text, panels located on a primary facade and highly visible, not recommended. This is not an arbitrary determination. It's not based on no standards. The other thing that came up was, let's see, number 2. The solar array is an essential utility infrastructure. Tobias, thank you. The HCC does not work. Our HCC reviews structures, architectural buildings, structures for character and setting that are either that are private property, not utility companies, which are on public property. The solar arrays are on private property. They are not, by definition, a public utility, and therefore they are part of the HCC's purview. Let's see. There was another one I wanted to mention. Maybe I'll remember it, maybe I won't. Promoting the general welfare and economy of Nantucket, I spoke to. that is in the context of promoting the character and setting for the general welfare, given we are a historic maritime resource and part of our designation under the Intersecretary Act for a historic landmark is our open spaces and our rural character and setting. Lastly, let me just see if I got anything else. Mass Historical Commission's A Guidebook for Historic District Commission states, accommodating any modern equipment, including solar panels, should be done in such a way as to minimize visibility from public ways. This is typically accomplished by locating solar panels on rear Ls, subordinate wings, secondary massings, accessory buildings, or as a freestanding array. The HDC actually is a little more liberal than many communities. We do not have a prohibition outright on any solar panels in any location other than case-by-case determinations of visibility from a public way on a primary structure on the roof or other primary element of the structure. It is not inconsistent with the state standard. It is not inconsistent with the federal standard, which I'm not going to bore you with. It is not inconsistent with our published guidelines. It is not that process is not inconsistent with process the HDC has undertaken since I've been a member of the board for 10 years. Lastly, the prohibition was not on solar on the property. The prohibition was on solar on the front of a low slung structure facing a heavily traveled rural road. And in addition, the HDC offered mitigation, visual screening. The HDC offered a ground array. Ground arrays are typically not installed as a matter of economics by the applicant, which is not part of the HDC's purview. And I think that's probably enough for now. Thank you.
Questions? Oh, Val, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just briefly, because he covered a lot of it. I guess I want to say I'm disappointed that we keep having this ongoing conflict about solar panels, because we kind of had a group all together, some of your people and the HDC members, and sat down for months after the article got turned down at town meeting 2022 and came up with some guidelines that seemed to work for all of us, people in the business, HDC members, and whoever else was on the work group, that we never finished. But what we did was document the stuff we did agree on and spend a lot of time on. And one was the front of the house, the least amount of visibility. And the HDC can't bend to accommodate every single type of new technology as it arises. And I would just say that I have learned from reviewing so many applications, including some that Tobias's group has come in with, that south isn't always the only alternative to panels. And sometimes west seems to be the best because it's a source where the sun lasts the longest. And you have come in with solar panels on other sides. So sometimes we get sort of pigeonholed into south is the only answer, but it's not. And we didn't deny anything. We said, we'll approve them on the back. You can have ground arrays, as Stephen said, or screen them. So we are trying to work with everybody on these. And yeah, I would just say there's a little give and take all the way around. Thank you.
Board questions? I mean, I continue to come back to the same thing. Is there not a way for you to apply for something in between and try and work this out? They offered alternatives for this with screening and
I think there's always that opportunity, and I've always worked with the board, and the board would acknowledge that, you know, they've always worked with us. I think what I'm asking the board to do this evening is look just very specifically on the clause that it's the front. There's not specific guidelines outlining, you know, the word the front is not mentioned in the guidelines. They're from 2009. I acknowledge that we have done a lot of work. The HDC has done a lot of work improving solar. We got some done on Born and Bred, a historic building in downtown that's visible and blends in nicely. And we work, you know, to fit things in. So it's not to say that we always work with the HDC, but I felt that it was important to appeal this decision, because I felt like it was not, the standard was being held inconsistently on a number of different points. And so I'd be happy to just submit my rebuttal and then move from there, unless you have any other questions.
Anybody? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first off, Stephen mentioned this idea that utility infrastructure is only on public property. The HDC's jurisdiction is on all structures. It doesn't suggest public or private in any way. There's a transformer out here, you know, 30 feet away from us, and it's on the town's land, but the utility services it and uses it. All right. So in summary, you know, first, on front-facing panels, the HDC acknowledges that the word front or front-facing does not appear in the solar guidelines. Well, visibility is discussed. Visibility is not a prohibition. The guidelines require judgment based on scale, portion, material, and context. My context being there's solar in 4 other properties across the street, 1 within 20 feet of the road on the front of the structure. Not a category restriction. Banning the front is not a categorical restriction based on roof orientation. Conditioning approval on driveway relocation or screening applies a standard that is not written in the guidelines. Second, on utility infrastructure, the HDC states that its purview is not tied to the Department of Public Utilities. That may be true administratively, but it does not resolve the inconsistency. Solar panels are part of the electrical system, just like meters, transformers, and poles, all of which are visible from public ways and are not regulated by the HDC. Everyone will remember they just got a new smart meter. The utility came to your individual house because they own that meter all the way on your house, not visible from the public way. So there's a separate standard being applied here, which I feel is arbitrary, capricious. Third, the general welfare. I want to be clear to Nantucketers and anybody who reads the act, it's for the general welfare. It's very clear. The general welfare, you know, Exmar has been a client of the town's. You felt that it was in your good for the town to have solar on your roofs. That's the general welfare. That's saving everybody money. And then finally on precedent, the HDC notes other visible solar installations are approved on their individual merits. This application deserves the same treatment. It meets the guidelines, it fits in the architectural context, and does not rely on prohibited design features. For this reason, I respectfully request that the Select Board overturn the conditions and approve the project as proposed with solar on the front of the structure. Thank you very kindly. And unless you have any other questions, I'm not going to jump back up again.
Board members, do you have a rebuttal, Stephen?
Oh, I guess I'm going to have to. Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple things. The front of a structure, the HDC, there's common parlance referring to the front. And what the front is referring to is, in this instance, panels located on a primary facade that are highly visible. You can have a front door on a structure. The HDC isn't concerned about where the front door is. If the solar panels are on that facade and it's not visible from the street, we have a well-established practice of approving such solar panels. So again, we are making determinations based upon prior established written guidelines and local best practices that include involvement of the special interest installers who are doing their part to help Nantucket. I guess that's one point. The other is the adjacent property. If I recall correctly, that is an accessory structure. It is not a primary mass. There is a difference in the hierarchy, which is also indicated in the guidelines, where a primary mass versus a secondary mass or an ancillary structure, or for instance, solar panels incorporated into a trellis or a pergola. So comparing apples to apples is an important distinction as opposed to generalization of, oh, there's some panels down the street or around the corner. I'm not suggesting any ill intent on Tobias's part, but I think it's an important distinction. Along those lines, I'm going to just jump into something Tobias was wrapping up, is individual case-by-case basis. We do review every application on a case-by-case basis. And in this instance, we asked for solar ground array. I'm not going to repeat any of that again, but I think any suggestion that this wasn't a determination based upon all the standards that I've previously referenced is erroneous. Well, I don't think it is. That's the assertion of the board. Official. We stand by our decision. Lastly, public utilities versus residential utilities. If at this late hour I confused a couple of words when I said something, which I don't even need to have it be a late hour for me to do that. That can just happen pretty much any time of the day. But public utilities, the distinction I was attempting to make is the difference between public utilities, which the HDC does not have purview over. So transformers, telephone poles, guy wires, so on, radio towers, versus residential, commercial utilities. The HDC has the ability to weigh in on anything that is a structural or an architectural feature that affects the character and setting in an inappropriate manner. That's part of our act. Thank you.
Two quick points. One, when we had our group discussions ongoing,
You
one
can
of
pull
the-
that mic down.
What's that?
You can pull it down, the mic, just might help.
Okay. We discussed the amount of panels on a building and how to determine that. And by and large, what I came away from, and I guess we need to revisit this and circulate some of the information that came out of these meetings, was that it's great to have enough panels to power your house, but we shouldn't be in the business of being able to approve 10 times more than you actually need so you can make money. That was one little bit of criteria. And with regard to public utilities, if I'm not mistaken, for years now, we've been charged on our national grid bills to bury the cables, and none of that has happened. I guess they don't have to listen to us, but we'd prefer not to see them either. So, and I think that was, the town also weighed in on that, but I don't think we're arbitrary. We really try to work with people, and it comes down to visibility and whether it's written down or not, because we haven't updated Building with Nantucket in mind yet. If you look at the guidelines that were produced in 2009, the pictures may not say front of building, but they all show the front of a house with a door and not recommended. So that's it. Thank you.
Board questions?
I don't want to. No.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Do you want to close the public hearing?
Motion to
then?
close the public hearing. I have a couple of comments, but.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, made by Brooke, seconded by Tom. All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon, Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously.
I feel like we've had a double whammy of the evolution of Nantucket, the evolution of technology, changing deer populations, right? And what is the appropriate evolution of the HDC's work as we are not in 1850. We're not in 1830. We have evolved, right? And it's evolved. And so I feel like we're sort of at an inflection point on two separate things that have a similar dilemma, right? However, I'm not persuaded by the public benefit. The rest of that sentence clearly states the purview. So that to me was not persuasive. I'm not persuaded by the transformers and public utilities are public utilities. These are privately owned. So that argument is not persuasive. And frankly, even front, I get what you're talking about. I get, even though the language isn't there, I think it's clear. And I'm just curious, like in this particular instance, if it had been the part that was approved and the addition and not the main structure, might that have been, and maybe this is a rhetorical question, might that be considered differently, right? Because what I saw was panels on both sides of the entire structure, right? Including what I believe you refer to as the main mass, right? And then there's an addition, right?
I think it is a
It's a rhetorical question.
I mean,
So in my
we've
mind.
closed the public hearing.
Right. So
if we have any questions, just to only to George.
So I guess what I understand is I'm hearing what their argument was. So I'm not persuaded.
Tom?
Madam Chair. Yeah, Brooke, you kind of pulled back on the 40,000 foot above and talked about kind of some things in the bigger picture here. And this is one of these issues where I sort of look at, as Brooke stated, the change of time and technology, et cetera, et cetera. And kind of that being the preserve historic community we sometimes struggle with those. And that's a tough one. That's tough especially for HDC, I'm sure at times, as evidenced by tonight and other appeals and your daily business and all that. But I think there's and I don't want to take one thing that Mr. Welch said and seem like I'm discarding everything else. But one thing he did say, which was economics are not the purview of the HDC. The second part of Section 2 of the Act does say, and through benefits resulting to the economy of Nantucket and developing and maintaining its vacation travel industry through the promotion of its historic associations. And that's all wonderful. That's the reason why Nantucket is such a great place. But I think it also ties into their argument. So I'm kind of stuck with this it lends credence to their argument, but I'm sort of stuck with, okay, is it our standards are arbitrary and capricious, and what's in the packet and what's at this hearing, right? So I might be able to sit here and as Tom, like as a citizen, and say, you know what, I think they should be able to do a front-facing array on Pulpus Road, and that seems fine to me. But that's not what my judgment is. As Dawn has said before, right? We can't. Our job is not to substitute the judgment of the HCC commissioners for our own, based on that case. So I think based on your solar guidelines that are on your website, based on what's in the packet, that it's not arbitrary and capricious in this case. But I think that the collision of technology and Nantucket and 2026 versus ages ago, and the difference between the historic downtown and obviously, which is a very specific thing in other places, and it being ambiguous for applicants is a tough one. And I'm sure that's something you struggle with too. I'm certainly struggling in this. I'm not an HCC commissioner. I'm a select board member. So I can only kind of, I don't deal with this on a weekly basis. So anyway, all that being said, that's a very long-winded way of saying that I struggle with the bigger 40,000 foot above picture of this, because I think something could be done to tighten this up. I don't further guidelines or more specific or certain districts. I don't know. This is not my area, obviously. But I think reading what your guidelines are and what your decision was, that I, as Brooks, that I don't think I can find it arbitrary and capricious on this decision. Even though my own judgment says that Mr. Wallace should be able to put those solar panels on his house because of where, but that's immaterial in this hearing.
Malcolm?
I'm not conflicted or complicated at all. I mean, I can remember years ago when solar panels were first discussed on this island. It was very controversial. No one wanted them. And I have to compliment the fact that the industry, the HTC, did get together and get some guidelines. They're following the guidelines. And I think this is one area where technology has started to come up to speed with the time, and still keeping in mind our historic traditions. So this is certainly not arbitrarious. They followed their rules. It's not arbitrary.
Thank you. I really appreciate that the HDC has come up with guidelines on the solar panels. I think they have evolved. I think maybe there will be opportunities to evolve further, and technologies will get better to be more invisible, hopefully. I do think that the guidelines were applied properly. If you get too specific with the guidelines, you kind of lose a lot of what the HDC is about, which is being site specific, application specific. And you want to have some parameters for the public to go off of so that it doesn't create all of the confusion. But if you make, but you do have to allow the ability to look at it on a case by case basis. And I think that they were very clear in how they applied their thinking on this one. And I mean, I would love to see the applicant, maybe see if there's some other middle ground so that they can accomplish their goals. But that would require just going back with another application.
The language of the motion to uphold the HDC, move that we uphold the HDC's decision.
It would
Or
be,
deny
I
the.
second that.
it would be to
Deny
the
the-
appeal and
that-
uphold the decision of the HDC.
Yeah, I
Right.
make that motion.
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor by roll call: Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Second.
I'm sorry. The HTC needs to adjourn first.
yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for your time this evening and patience with the whole process. We're going to adjourn the meeting. There being no dissent, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very kindly. I'm
Thank
sure
you. It's a good
it's-
discussion to be
it's a great
having.
discussion. I
Yeah.
think it was nice to hear that the board members seemed agreement in the concept. We need more solar on the island, and I think we're going to work with the board, continue to work with them to make this island awesome.
And
Thank you
we'd
so much.
love to
Have a great
have
night.
more
Keep it awesome.
oversight on public utilities,
Yeah.
can all agree on
radio
that.
towers and so forth.
All right,
Okay,
so now I'll
motion
make
to
my
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Malcolm
Tobias does
McNabb,
really work with us.
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously. We are adjourned.
Yep, we got him.